OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
Alright, very welcome along. It's Thursday morning, it's 7:30. This is OTB AM. It's Ger Shane and Colin Bowie with you this morning. Gentlemen, how are you?
Alright, lads.
How are things?
What's going on?
Mildly hungover, Shane?
Only mildly. I was very...
You're young, you see.
Exactly, yeah. It was, well, don't feel it sometimes, but yeah, it was a brilliant night. I was at the roadshow last night. Just the Champions League roadshow with the lads. Nathan and Joe did a stellar job as per usual. Graham Souness, Wes Brown, John O'Shea.
Graham Souness was a late replacement for Paul Merson. It was good time to get Souness because he's finishing up his guy, right? Yeah,
he made the hint and joked that he's not used to being a substitute, of which there was an awkward but funny silence. And he was in brilliant form. He said the decision to leave Sky was not his own, that he would have liked to have stayed on. But, at the way it was going for him, he was getting 1 year deals and he expected and hoped maybe he'd get another 1 year deal. And sadly didn't. Sky decided, as he said, to move in a different direction and he was quite okay with that decision. He said he's had a couple of offers already.
I was going to say, Graham Souness issues come and get me plea to be in sports /CBS is it CBS or NBC?
Keys and Gray, is it? Yeah. No, he kind of laughed off the Keys and Gray suggestion from, I think it was Nathan. And he said he said one of the two offers, one's in media, it appears, and the other is within football. Which was an interesting shout. Now, Nathan was like, "Oh, you're mad going back into management," and he said, "Well, not necessarily management,
director of football style,
could be something,
president."
Yeah, so he seemed interested in the offers.
Like if you're Rangers, for example, and you're bringing back Graham Souness to oversee some kind of reputational enhancement, some kind of shield for the board, I can see why the club would look at that. From his perspective though, like, is it a role where he's going to have power to influence things? Yeah, you'd wonder.
And he's a man, like, as was pointed out last night, he turns 70 next weekend.
Wow, he looks amazing.
He looks unbelievable.
For a guy who has had his heart issues as well when he was a very young man at Liverpool, when he was player manager.
He goes swimming 4 mornings a week with a couple of mates at 6:30 every morning. Has a gym that he uses in his gaff. But clearly stays in a remarkable nick. Has 6 kids as well, the youngest of which is 23, so I guess that keeps him young as well.
What? I know. That does not keep you young, Shane. That does not keep you young. That's the opposite.
I would have thought, if you're 23-year-old, it keeps you in touch with
it doesn't keep you young. It's like constantly stressed.
I suppose.
You kid when he was 47.
God.
Plenty of time for you, Colin.
Yeah, exactly. He was in
math on it. Wow.
He at one point he was given out about the modern game in football.
They have this. You don't have to. It's just for everybody out there watching. Just go on.
Have to what?
You don't have to have the kid.
True. Yeah.
You can.
We have this chat now.
You can prevent it from happening if you want to.
Advice for me and Colin here.
There are numerous methods that maybe you don't get taught in Irish schools.
Maybe we'll talk about this later.
We'll talk about it now if you want.
Post-production meeting maybe. He started giving out about the modern game. Pre-production. Sorry, yeah, which should be the case. He stood up at one point and started saying, "What's all this crap about when coaches opening up binders before a player comes on? Like, surely the work is done at that point." And then he started doing all this crack with managers, using the hand gestures on the sideline, and he clearly wasn't a fan of that. He even stood up at one point to gesture how much he doesn't like it. Yeah, Tony Adams essentially. There was the other big moment from the night, I think, was when John O'Shea was asked about Evan Ferguson.
Oh yeah.
And I was thinking, John's on the coaching staff now, the senior setup. Stephen Kenny gave him a call. He's going to play this down, and he said, basically, mark my words, Evan Ferguson will threaten Robbie Keane's goal scoring record.
Wow.
And everyone was like, whoa.
Wow. Expect that in your social media feed very soon, I'd say.
When we say it, we're absolute lunatics getting carried away with ourselves. Choo-choo, hype train. But
he leaned into it then.
He knows a thing or two about
that's
football.
Amazing. Yeah. Directly involved with them in the Irish setup as well, to say that.
He said he's not currently as focused on goals as Robbie was perhaps at that age, but the rest of his game is unbelievable, but the goals will come. And he said once the tap is open, I suppose, then there's no turning it off.
I don't care if he threatens Robbie Keane's goal record, if he becomes a player who also creates, like if he is a more assist creator as well, because that's, in a way, it's kind of harder to mark.
Yeah.
It's more influential in games over the long run,
Yeah, and John is he spoke very highly of Brighton and the work that De Zerbi. He was asked at one stage, I think, by one of the lads, who is the best manager in world football at the moment. And the name he first came to was Roberto De Zerbi.
Wow.
As someone, he said at Stoke, he watched him up close when they played Brighton, I think, in the FA Cup this season, and he said he's so impressed by De Zerbi and just the in-game management.
Well, he doesn't know our league, does he?
Well,
what?
This is it.
Who said that? Was it Merce? It was Merce, wasn't it?
Merce, yeah, right. Possibly.
Well, that would have been an interesting little moment.
Riposte.
No.
Not having it.
Well, he knows our league now, Paul, doesn't he?
He certainly does. But yeah, O'Shea spoke glowingly of the work. John would have played with Barry Ferguson, Evan's dad, at the Toulon Cup years ago when they were under 21s.
Wow, okay.
So would know the family quite well. But
circles within circles here.
Yeah, essentially. That was really good. Like, even they spoke about that Cristiano Ronaldo Sporting Lisbon match when O'Shea was supposedly absolutely destroyed by a young Ronaldo.
He was. Supposedly about it.
Have you seen it? Is there footage of it?
There is footage.
It was live on Eurosport at the time, I remember that.
Was it?
Yeah, I vividly remember that game being live.
I assumed it was one of those things that was reported on, ethereal and not actually in existence. It was on Eurosport, okay.
Yeah, they were flying home from Lisbon that night.
Yeah.
And the players said they went up to Ferguson in the plane, like the senior players, boss, you got to sign this kid. And he was like, don't worry, lads, I'm on it. Right. Turned out that they went straight to him in the dressing room afterwards, being like, you're coming home with us. And he was like, no, I need to stay for a while. A week later, he was back.
Right.
Old Trafford.
But O'Shea said he was jet lagged for that match because they'd come back from the States.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So that was his excuse. Got them in early. Yeah. Really good. Wes Brown added a lot to it as well. He does a lot of work with MUTV and kind of can speak very, very well, Wes. They analysed the cross for the Ronaldo header in the 08 Champions League final.
Oh yeah,
being around Ferguson as not a hands-on coach, but the impact that Ferguson would have had with all those coaches over the years, Muhlenstein and Phelan and McLaren.
Wes Brown was in with us the morning after the Roy Keane Gary Neville roadshow, and he was the one who told us that it had gone straight to the WhatsApp group from the Man United players who were like, have you seen what Keane said? I was like, oh, that's interesting. Right.
Yeah. Wes said he had seen the MUTV tape of because obviously John O'Shea was asked about the MUTV tape and Roy Keane laying into, among other players, John O'Shea quite heavily.
Oh, was O'Shea part of it?
O'Shea was one of the players.
Oh, I didn't realise that.
Really heavily laid into it. And John was he wasn't asked about it too often, this question, but he said, look, it's something that Roy would have said to him many times. It wasn't like the tape was mad shocking. And Wes Brown said he has seen the tape, of course, and he was in the room when it was played to the players, and he didn't think it was that bad.
Right.
Like the players,
it's just an excuse to get rid of him because they thought he was washed up.
Yeah, 100%.
They decided that they didn't want to pay him the most money anymore, and that the power that he had was out of whack with what the contribution that they thought he was getting.
He was injured at the time, of course, as well. They had no use for him.
Well, if Roy was in his prime when this tape comes out.
Oh, they would have like, look at Roy's town. You guys all better follow him.
Yeah, it was John O'Shea, Kieran Richardson, Rio Ferdinand, wasn't it? Karen Fletcher. Those names were the ones called out. There's saying here in the comments, Souness was saying the very kind stuff about De Zerbi.
Well, O'Shea brought his name up first, but then Souness backed him up, and was complimentary.
That's right, so the two of them said it.
Yeah. Both complimentary of Roberto De Zerbi and the work they're doing with younger players. But there was a lot of really interesting things out of it.
Yeah.
But the Evan Ferguson line, I think, had everyone excited. And then Souness said he hadn't seen him live, but he's watched a lot of Evan Ferguson, and he's going to be a big star, he said. So
I have a review in here from a regular of the show.
Right.
Souness the standout. Some heavy questions on him about mortality, which threw him a little, I think. Definitely made him open up after that. Crowd loved him.
Well, it was quite funny because the first portion was just Graham by himself. And then you had John O'Shea and Wes Brown by themselves, and then the three lads. But the portion of Graham by himself saw another side to him. At one point, Joe asked him, because his 70th birthday is approaching, he asked him, do you ever think about your mortality? There was a bit of an awkward oohs and ahs from the crowd, but Joe then reiterated he didn't mean it in an offensive way. Graham did not take it in an offensive way. But it led to an interesting road talking about his health and that incident, as he say, Colin, when he had a few blocked arteries, I think, at 38, and opted for the surgery. And he said, looking back, he regrets going for the surgery. He only went for it because he's in a stressful job. A couple of his uncles had died quite young from heart issues, so he figured he didn't want to be one of those. But it led to a really fascinating other side to Graham Souness that I hadn't seen.
What was the alternative to the surgery?
Kind of take your chances, because obviously the recovery from the surgery was quite heavy on him as well.
All right.
But probably hindsight 2020, but he probably made the right decision regardless of
yeah,
his
although
regrets,
maybe there's drugs now. Maybe you stick him on the statins and he's grand. I don't know.
Yeah, possibly.
If there's any cardiologist watching this morning, you might just out of pure nosiness.
Yeah, drop us a line.
Yeah, exactly. How would you have treated Graham Souness 30 years ago?
Yeah, but no, it was fascinating night, and just to see the dynamic between even John and Wes talking about actually really fascinating their Sunderland days, talking about Paulo Di Canio as a manager.
Were they mates?
They were mates, yeah.
And it comes across that they're mates, not
Big
just
time.
like they weren't just teammates, they were mates.
Yeah, spent most of their careers together, because even when they left United, they were at Sunderland. And
for longer than I thought, actually. I was looking up each of their respective times at Sunderland. They were there for quite a while, Brown.
Yeah,
O'Shea.
significant
Especially
time.
O'Shea.
The Canio management, like, I did not realise how attention to detail Paulo Di Canio was. He said at one point they were stopped from, they couldn't use mouthwash. There were other things from their diet that they could not use under Paulo Di Canio. And he also, and John O'Shea said this with I didn't like this portion of Di Canio's management. He said there was a guy who worked at the Stadium of Light, and he had worked there for decades. Like, this was an older gentleman who was part of the fabric of Stadium of Light and Sunderland Football Club, and the players used to shake hands with him or whatever, or give him a hug on the way into every match. And Di Canio said, "No more. I don't want you shaking his hand. It's putting you off before a match." He wanted the walk to the dressing room to be completely head down. So
John O'Shea saw the global pandemic coming.
Yeah, possibly. But he queried O'Shea, I think, and Brown were two of the leaders in that Sunderland team. He probably queried that sort of decision making.
Yeah, it sounds nonsensical.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Where's Paulo now as a manager?
Yeah.
How did that work out for him?
Well, they said if Paulo was a calmer character, he would have been a brilliant manager.
I mean, you could say the same about Roy Keane, right?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if you could. I don't know. I actually think Roy Keane is a brilliant TV pundit, particularly in light of the stuff that, you see what Brawley was saying at the weekend, and you remember the times watching the Ireland games and going, this is a shit game, and then on comes Dunphy and Giles and Brady, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, there's something else happening here that I'm unaware of.
Yeah.
So maybe Paulo Di Canio could be a world-class TV pundit.
Jeez, he's 10 years out of management, Di Canio. That was 10 years ago. That's
Is he doing TV?
Don't know, I haven't heard from him in a long time. Saw him in a documentary a couple of years ago, and I was, Paulo.
Right, if you want to get in touch with us, 087 918 180 is the WhatsApp number. You can leave a comment on youtube.com/offtheball. Make sure you hit subscribe on YouTube, and if you're listening to our podcast, by the way, and I'll rate on Apple, you can leave a comment there as well. We do read them all eventually. Harriet Prior is coming up at 8 o'clock to talk Liverpool and the WSL. Mark Breheny and Finian Hanley are going to preview the Connacht football final for us. One JD, please. He's back at 8:40. Our quarter-final preview, it is Ulster versus Connacht. Cameron's going to join us for that. Graham Hunter's going to join us at 9:10. Lots and lots of Barcelona and Messi and Real Madrid and Spain news. If you haven't seen this, the headline this morning is about Leo Messi and how much money he's going to make in Saudi Arabia. Where's the money? I
think it's 320 million.
Messi's 320 million sterling a year is the front headline on the Telegraph. So the trip to Saudi Arabia was not just a little jaunt to help them advertise their tourism industry as it has been defended. It was like, he'd made his plans, there was no training, and then they rearranged training and he couldn't change his travel plans. He couldn't get his private jet to take off a few hours earlier. He couldn't? Okay. That was the Paris Saint-Germain route. Of course, Paris Saint-Germain, owned by Qatar?
Mm-hmm.
Saudi Arabia and Qatar, not the best of mates.
Yeah, that's what I thought. That's the way I read into it. Just
okay. Yeah. And so what's going to happen is he's going to go for $400 million for 1 year, £320 million, and he'll sign for whatever club they tell him to sign for. Not quite sure yet which one.
Al Hilal seems to be the team mentioned, isn't it?
Is it? But I think so. Ronaldo joined Al Nassr, and their traditional rivals are Al Hilal, and it looks like they would place him with them. But Ronaldo will be gone. Yeah. Maybe Ronaldo looks at this and goes, "Oh, you're bringing Messi, and how much is he getting? Oh, maybe I'll stay now, but you have to give me the same."
So they're going to pick the club for him. They're going to force him to play for a certain club. This is kind of like Frank Sinatra in Vegas, isn't it? When he was like, he had to play there like night after night. Didn't even want to, but he was forced by the powers that be.
Yeah. The mob.
Yeah.
Well,
he didn't want to do it. Unhappy. He was miserable.
Did he not make his own bed?
Regrets, I've had a few. Then again, too few to mention. That they could have been some of them. And this could be the Messi situation.
Do you think Leo Messi will regret earning 320 million a year?
I think Messi will regret losing control of his own destiny.
He's going to go back to Barcelona, isn't he?
2 years? I don't think so. I think this is...
It's a principle though, isn't it? Could be 2 years or 20.
The other thing is...
I see the control of my life to other people.
Why would you...
I'll get that back.
Yeah, but you get the money. They bought your control and they paid you well for it.
Sure.
Well compensated.
It's life, I suppose, isn't it?
What would you... Why did Barcelona want him back at this stage of his career?
Swan song.
Are you basing that because they don't need him? Because they're performing okay domestically?
No, it's more there's a lot of emotion involved in it, but they're getting somebody who is not as good as he was. And granted, okay, so you'll have the Messi Museum and you'll sell a load of shirts and all that stuff is, the brand of the world's biggest brands will want to be associated with him. Fair enough. The shirt thing is less important these days than it used to be. But I'm just not sure if you're Barcelona, you've already moved on from him and you have a bunch of kids. You're going to sell some of those kids to raise the money. Now, maybe they're not that good, but they're certainly good enough to be important players for Barcelona for the next 10 years, 7 years, 5 years, which isn't the case with Messi. You're going to get maximum 2 seasons out of him. And are you going to win a Champions League with Messi in your side? I'm just not sure. The greatest player of all time, and your association with him is forever there. But it's going to be forever there. And if he just goes off now, you don't have to pay him ridiculous amounts of money, which obviously he'll want.
I think if he goes back, then his legacy will be, remember that fling you had, that affair you had with PSG?
Yeah.
But you came back to us in the end because you realised you loved us. A bit like the end of Network.
It wouldn't be like the Ronaldo return to United, would it? It couldn't go that far south, surely.
Like all of this, I think the Ronaldo thing is different in that he cheated on Manchester United with Real Madrid and had all his best years at Real Madrid.
They agreed to that separation, Fergie and Ronaldo. I think we should see other people. And then, he came back.
It's not you, it's me, but it's definitely
you.
you.
They were better as friends, as it turned out. But Messi and Barcelona are lovers, and they will be reunited. They just had a big falling out 2 years ago.
This is getting very graphic, very graphic.
But also, it's a good point about Messi. Would he disturb the rhythm and the momentum of Barcelona? He's one of a handful of players that will actively and visibly change the behaviour of his teammates around them, because everyone's so aware that Messi's on the pitch.
Yeah.
So you change what you're about to do. You second guess what you're going to do with the ball because Messi's there. So he'll obviously drop deeper. He'll probably play as part of a midfield 3. But he also showcased that at the World Cup, he's still brilliant. He can be when he's motivated. Can you motivate him for a whole season?
It's very difficult. It's really very difficult, and it's going to get less and less easy to do that. And also, the World Cup was, the one thing that he really needed to do. He's already won literally everything that's possible to win with Barcelona. So, I don't know. We will talk to Graham Hunter about this a little bit later on. If you have any thoughts on it, we'd love to hear from you. We should talk about some of the other big stories from yesterday. You were about to go. I'm going to go Big Sam here.
Oh yeah, this is actually a really good point, right? Because we have it in the running order that Erling Haaland has broken his Premier League goal scoring record, and we're 17 minutes into the show and we haven't talked about it, but for good reason, because I think people are a bit apathetic towards the whole thing and towards Manchester City's dominance, unless you're a Man City supporter. It's really it was quite the feeling. I think this is anybody else, any other club. Mo Salah has 29 goals this season. I think if Salah had scored 35 Premier League, we'd probably be starting with Salah. But there's something to do with Haaland is this kind of freak of nature machine. There's the soullessness of Man City. I personally enjoy watching them. I think their football is sensational. But I understand the naysayers who are like, whatever. 3-0 against West Ham, 0-0 after 54 minutes. That's about as exciting as it got.
It's just like Erling Haaland is programmed to score this many goals. He's like a robot. You just press a button and he scores that many goals. You just insert the 2 digits and you tell the computer how many goals you want him to score.
What?
This is what he's done.
But it is phenomenal.
Cardiology, proctology, whatever you want on the show this morning.
His first competitive game for Man City, Community Shield, missed the sitter, blazed it over right there, open goal. And the first game of the season away to West Ham, the corresponding fixture, scored a penalty. I don't think anyone envisioned 51 goals later. By the way, he's 12 off Dixie Dean's all-time record from 1927-28. So he has 9 games if they make the Champions League final to break the all-time goal-scoring record ever.
All right. Allardyce went...
exactly. And then everyone's like, okay, yeah. Anyway, on to the other news.
Well, Allardyce went full Stephen Ireland, says Latte Larry, which is about the best tying up of the 2 big stories in terms of the egos have landed this week. And it's true. We haven't even mentioned Robbie Keane. That's as left field a shot and shout as I remember. I did not have Robbie Keane in my Sam Allardyce bingo for he's going to be the guy in the touchline. Phil Brown used to do that role for Big Sam. Did Kevin Nolan do it at some point, or am I mixing that up?
I think He played from out West Ham. Wasn't he as captain at West Ham? I don't know if he was.
He's doing it now for Moisey. So it's a big opportunity for Robbie Keane to suddenly get back into football.
He hashtag knows the club. Do you know?
Well, does he? He wasn't there that long.
Well, he was there.
There for a year and a half.
Year and a half's long enough to get to know the club, isn't it? He knows the area, he knows the town, he knows the training ground.
Knows the area. It's been 20 years.
Leeds hasn't changed.
It's all
much in 20
changed.
years.
Yeah, he went on loan initially from Inter. I remember that loan spell was great, and then they made the transfer permanent 01-02, and he was gone then at the end of that.
Well, that's the
brief.
I mean, you could definitely have a 10-part Netflix series on those 3.5, 4 years at Leeds.
The Ridsdale years, incredible.
Like Ridsdale, slightly ahead of his time in that he massively borrowed on the back of the fact that the team was going to earn loads of money to get into the Champions League, and then the team couldn't get into the Champions League. You could say this is basically what the Glazers have done, is make a lot of money off the back of borrowings. But anyway, I think it's time for Peter Ridsdale's reappreciation.
Yeah, I don't remember the Leeds fans at the time complaining at the height of it when they had this incredible squad and they were going deep into the Champions League. Yeah,
well, the squad initially had been built on the young players and a few astute signings. Remember, George Graham came in, he left. I can't even remember, was there controversy around him leaving? David O'Leary stepped up and wasn't supposed to be getting the job, and then he got the job because he took them on a great run, and then they started splashing out ridiculous money. But there was a story about the amount of money that they'd spent on exotic fish, and it was thousands. And as the club was careering into oblivion, it turned out 2 decades of oblivion, the fish was kind of this symbol of the waste. The other one was one of the players come in, Seth
Johnson.
Was it Seth Johnson who came in
from Derby,
and was like the story about how much money he was getting paid was he kind of paused shocked, and they jumped in and doubled it because of the pause.
Yeah.
And then it ended up that the story was that he got 3 times more than he had expected to. And I was like, okay,
I'll take this.
He talks about that subsequently. He was like, it's the hardest I've ever had to bite my tongue not to laugh or to get too excited because of that pause when they doubled it. Yeah, but that was the time, like, they were just high on life.
Cian Rowe was commenting on the YouTube, lads, that was genius from Big Sam, takes all the pressure off the players and all the attention on him. Jose-esque.
That's
for anyone who hasn't heard these comments,
that is absolutely not why he was doing that. Like, he just thinks he's great.
I might be 68, this is Sam yesterday for anyone who hasn't heard it. I might be 68 and look old and antiquated, but there's nobody ahead of me in football terms. Not Pep, not Klopp, not Arteta. It's all there with me. They do what they do and I do what I do. In terms of knowledge, I'm not saying I'm better than them, but I'm certainly as good as they are. That's genius from Big Sam Allardyce.
And he was taking sips of water in between the sentences too to add to the power play. That he's very relaxed.
The little pause.
And you're on my time.
Is that what you're doing now? Just a little.
Just reminded me. Oh, Bobby Dwyer's in the comments. I'd say he is ahead of him this morning.
He's awake. You're awake, Bobby. Yeah.
He had a good night.
He did have a good night. He was getting selfies with Nathan Murphy, his hero. Last night. So good night for Bobby.
Nathan, just by the way, Nathan loves it when you fanboy him. That's his favourite thing in the world. So if you're out there and you spot Nathan, and if he happens to be munching on an illicit croissant or cookie in Super Value or Tesco or wherever it is he shops, he likes nothing more than somebody getting a selfie, particularly with bits of crumbs on his face.
Oh yeah, I was standing at the bar and Nathan was trying to kind of sneak off back into the stage room after taking his countless selfies, and I shouted Murphy across the bar, and he was probably thinking, oh, happy days, this is another fan. But it turns out it was just his colleague Shane waving over at him. So
did yourself and Bobby get a selfie?
Bob did get a selfie with me as well. Yeah. Probably to send to yourself. I think he wanted to send it to yourself. He was disappointed that he didn't get to meet his other hero, Colin Buhwick, of course.
Oh, you're his hero?
No, you.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
That's other hero.
100%.
Okay, yeah.
No, I'm certainly not his hero. But it was a good night. It was a good night's crack.
Yeah. Seamus Coleman.
Yeah, Seamus Coleman. Seamus Coleman, obviously, yesterday, a report comes out that an Instagram account, a picture of Seamus on the stretcher, fist up, going, no ACL damage, good news, back soon. And then you search Seamus Coleman Instagram and nothing comes up. A bunch of Seamus Coleman fan accounts come up, and then you look at the Everton and it's so Robbie Keane had wished him best at Shamey23, I think is the handle. Then you go to it and it's 400 followers and it's a private account. Is this real? Is this definitely real? But then Everton were the ones who shared it, so you have to assume that they're following their actual captain on his actual Instagram account. It has the bang of his missus saying, listen, you better get on Instagram because everybody else is on. He's like, yeah, okay, grand, but then doesn't do it. Just as like
private for his.
Yeah, he has like 14,000 requests and doesn't know how to answer them.
Yeah.
It is. It's a very small following, but and the picture is great that he or whoever chose was him geeing up the crowd from the stretcher.
Come on, the lads.
Which I thought was a great moment. But no, it's brilliant news ahead of next month's huge game in Greece.
Because I was thinking before the injury that like there's a couple of years of Seamus Coleman playing in a new system for us if we want it, you know, like being the leader on the field from the right of a three, and stepping into midfield when he needs to. Like he doesn't actually need to be the pacey player that he has been for his entire career for him to have a really important role within the Ireland setup, particularly at a time when the team is so bloody young.
Yeah, I think the only thing is though that is his game. He has pace and aggression and acceleration, speed.
But he's also brainy. Like
definitely, yeah. But I think the other factors are probably more prominent in his game. He'll have to change.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's exactly. Yeah. Well, for the last couple of years, it's it'd be better, I think, for us to have him on the field, organising, cajoling, complaining to referees, like having status, which we don't have that many other players who had that status. I mean, obviously, you know, you hope Ferguson does, but like let him be busy scoring goals as opposed to making him captain. You know, hopefully Josh Cullen doesn't get replaced in the off season. Like if Breheny are going to invest a lot of money, which they might do, they might look at strength in the midfield. You have to hope that he plays every minute next season in the Premier League. You have to hope that John Egan plays every minute in the Premier League. But after that, how many other Premier League players are we going to have next season?
He does. He's also one of those players who affects his teammates deeply.
Yeah.
Coleman. You see with the Everton contingent, when he went off in the stretcher, everybody was going over to him, wishing him well. And just the respect all the players have for him. It was on the start of the season, Damari Gray scored a winner, and they did a joint post-match interview. And Coleman was basically analysing Gray in the interview live, and Gray was just there like listening, nodding along to him, being Seamus said, look, he has all the talent in the world, but he needs to do it more. He was talking about him as if he wasn't there, but at the same time being very supportive, and Damari was just nodding along. And
well, if you think back, that's what Gundogan did about Haaland. When remember Haaland wasn't scoring and he was frustrated and not making the runs, and they were like, well, he's got to learn what to do, he's got to learn exactly where to go.
Sorry, on Haaland, Gary Neville made the very good point last night that imagine City passing the ball every time he made those runs, because oftentimes they ignore him, and they certainly did for the first half of the season. So he would have probably beaten Dixie Dean's record at this stage had they played him in every time he made those runs.
This is a really interesting moment in time for Manchester City, I think, because we can't forget the sanctions that are coming up, right? But also they're going to have an entirely new midfield next season. Like it looks like Gundogan is going to Barcelona. Will Rodri still be there? I'm not sure. They're not getting Bellingham. That's the other news that's happened in the last 24 hours, is that the rumours of the Manchester City being thwarted by Real Madrid have definitely, it seems, come to fruition. I'm not really sure Jude Bellingham is a Real Madrid player, but anyway,
I think it's a great move from him.
I
think it's
a great move in terms of like you don't have the microscope from the English media.
Exactly, that's probably
week
the
in,
big
week
thing.
out. And
he's the Modric replacement straight in. Modric has yet to sign a new contract.
They're entirely different players.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, but
they're entirely different players. You can't say that he's the Modric replacement and then go. So like Jude Bellingham is not going to control a game. He's got explosive talents and attributes, and he will score a ton of goals.
Yeah,
but he's far more a cross between Frank Lampard and Brian Robson, whereas Luka Modric is a very unique player who was able to control games and create in a way that, so Bellingham will create by taking attention away from other players, by making runs. Luka Modric does not do that.
No, but he can run a game like Modric can.
He can't.
He can run a game.
No,
I think he can.
Not yet.
The same way that when Casemiro left, Tchouaméni comes in and steps up. I think Bellingham will step up. And
Tchouaméni's not in the team.
No, but I think
it's Camavinga who's in ahead of him.
Yeah, but I think Bellingham coming into that team, he'll get a lot of chances to play. He'll get like so.
But he's not
going
to run the game. That's not the type of. He actually. I genuinely think that he would have fit Liverpool's style of play if Liverpool are going to continue with their heavy metal football, like, and then you just become another English player.
Yeah,
you know?
I think this is a miles better move. This is probably the best move he could have chosen. If he had gone to Liverpool...
What if he doesn't play that much?
But he's only 19. Okay, so if he'd gone to Liverpool and then Liverpool say don't win the league next season,
there's
they probably won't. Then there's Jude, I thought you were supposed to be the saviour. Then he's only 20 and he has all this whole career ahead of him where he's like, oh, another English flap who's overhyped. This way he goes, stays abroad, away from the Premier League, plays Real Madrid. He'll like have about 80% of the games every season, he'll be in a dominant team. He'll have loads of time on the ball. He'll be playing with two other people around him because they played three. He'll have Camavinga, Tchouaméni, he'll have Toni Kroos, and he'll have Modric as
Why
well.
don't
He's
we-
going to learn off all of these players.
Why don't we get Jasmine Baba to do a piece for us about what type of player he is and compare and contrast him with
Definitely,
other midfielders, particularly the ones he's replacing. Like, you'd say he's more a Tony Kroos replacement than a Luka Modric replacement.
But whatever about replacement, he's just adding to it, and he's going to learn so much from them. He does 2, 3, 4 years at Real Madrid, then goes to the Premier League. He has so much time ahead. I think it's a brilliant move for him.
I'm also a big fan of Camavinga, so he is.
Yeah, he's class.
It's going to be suddenly there's a really dynamic young midfield that they have access to. But the corollary of that is that who's going to be at Man City next season in midfield? Like, are they actually going to sell Calvin Phillips now? I don't know, but who are the 3 or the 2?
Well, they talk about second season syndrome negatively when a team gets promoted, has a great season, struggle the next time. It's the opposite under Pep. Oftentimes players struggle in their initial campaign. Pep's very frustrated with them. They're not doing what he says. Second season much better because they finally lose grip of control and like, Pep, tell me what to do. That's what Pep does. He micromanages all his players.
Their spirit gets broken.
Yeah.
So who are you saying?
Who for what?
Who's it going to be?
In midfield for City?
Yeah.
Jeez, I don't know. I have to think about it now. I have to think about it as I write a script for you.
All right, everybody, give us your Man City midfield next season. But the other thing is, of course, the sanctions that are coming. So this might be the end of the Manchester City period of dominance. OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition is available now. It is 8:01. During the ad break, you're going to hear a snippet from this week's episode of the Coigig podcast. Emma Byrne tells Kathleen McNamee and Karen Duggan why she's disappointed that Ireland are in League B in the Nations League and explains how it could damage the squad. The Coigig Pod on OTB is in association with Cadbury FC, official snack partner to the Republic of Ireland women's national team. After the break, Harriet Prior talking Liverpool.
OTB AM.
The Sports Breakfast Show from Off the Ball.
OTB Rugby.
It's what you believe in, and if you think it's going to work, then train it. There's no way as a coach you can say that I have an experienced rationale above my players on something like the wall. You know, it's really, let's see, does this work together? And then if you get a good vibe off it, let's bring it in. If you don't, all right, cut.
Subscribe to the rugby stream on the OTB Sports app now.
We were drawn against Northern Ireland, Hungary and Albania, which I won't lie, when I saw some of the groups that were pulled together in League A, and particularly the England group with Netherlands, Scotland and Belgium, I was just like, yeah, okay, maybe it's not the worst thing in the world to be in League B and actually be a competitive team and maybe go on a bit of a run. I don't know how either of you guys felt when you saw the draw come out.
I mean, it just reminds me of when we were trying to qualify for the next tier. It's just, I don't like it. I want to be up there in Group A. I don't care who we get. We should be up there competing against them. And it's like the Cyprus Cup. Remember, Carol, when we go Cyprus Cup and we'd be in the Group B and we'd be like, it's basically, it's just one of those things that you're trying to get into the next group and it's just, you're just playing games just to get there. So for me, it's a little bit disappointing to be in that. And I know the girls will be there, but you know, as you said, we're going to win that group and then get promoted, hopefully. But just don't want to be down there, especially when you look at the likes of Wales and that up there in Scotland. Like, we're better than those teams.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit, you know, another disappointing thing today. So,
The only thing I would say is that perhaps after the World Cup, we might see a couple of retirements and stuff. So maybe this is a good chance to blood new players. Like, we're not going to do it during the World Cup. It means too risky, but we should still be beating these teams with whatever panel we have. So it's a chance to build and bring in more people, I think. That's the only take. I'm trying to put a positive spin on things.
You're retiring.
I thought I was just going to go straight to like, nah.
OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
Right, it's 8:03. You're very welcome along to OTB AM. If you've just joined us, we're turning our attention to football. I'm delighted to say Harriet Prior is with us this morning. Harriet, good morning to you. How are you?
Morning, yeah, good, thank you. How are you guys?
Yeah, we were making the comparison a few minutes ago between Erling Haaland's goal total and Mo Salah's. Mo Salah's remarkable goal tally, which everybody will be talking about if Erling Haaland didn't exist.
It's really funny, isn't it? Because people were talking about Haaland earlier in the season, like he could have been a problem for this Man City side, and then he goes and breaks the record that he does. And look, you probably, it's difficult to compare, isn't it? Because Haaland for Manchester City is an out-and-out goal scorer, and Salah is a bit more of a forward, versatile player. But yeah, really impressive from Haaland, and you can't deny the impact that he's had, particularly in his first season in the Premier League. It's a bit ridiculous.
Notwithstanding that, though, because Mo Salah's had a difficult season, we've been told, and has been adjusting to new people and new patterns, and it's been an incredible return in terms of goals that he scored.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, and especially now he's back on penalties and scoring them again. It doesn't harm either. It's funny with Salah because I think with Liverpool, there always needs to be a player that people look at and point out as not performing consistently well. And sometimes when you're Salah, you kind of make it difficult for yourself because everyone has such high expectations of you because they're so used to seeing you perform well season in, season out. I mean, he is always the one that gets Liverpool out of trouble. He is always the one that's in form when Liverpool aren't playing very well. And he has had difficult spells in the last couple of seasons. And a lot of them have followed when the team themselves have had difficult spells. And it's difficult when he's not getting the supply that he needs. He's not got the midfielders behind him that are putting the balls in that he needs. But in the last few games, in the last run of games in particular, with Trent in that midfield area, he's getting really good balls into him. He's making really good runs. He's connecting really well with the other forward players. But there's been a lot of change for Mo Salah. He's having to adapt to playing without Mane, without Firmino for most of the time anyway. And that's difficult for any forward player to get used to playing with new teammates. And considering all of that, he's come through the season with a really good goal return again. Really impressive season, and most people would never put any doubt into their mind that Mo Salah just stay at their football club for a long time to come.
It felt like in the last couple of weeks that the first choice front three was going to emerge as Gakpo, Jota and Salah, and then last night Gakpo and Jota start on the bench. So how did Darwin Núñez, Luis Diaz and Mo Salah link up as a trio?
Yeah, Jota probably would have started last night, but there was a niggling injury with his back, so I think Jurgen Klopp didn't want to take any risks, particularly with the way that injuries have crept in this season. Diaz coming back has been such a big bonus. He's so direct, he's so good with the ball, he's so progressive, such an attacking threat that I think as soon as Jurgen Klopp could bring him feasibly back into the starting 11, he was going to do so. Núñez, it was an interesting one because he was getting a really good run of games and then he dropped out of the team again and Jota was brought in, and a lot of people questioned that, but then Jota started scoring goals and it all made sense. Núñez found it a little bit difficult last night, I think, to really just find the spaces for himself, because sometimes his touch was a little bit off and he was struggling to bring other players in, but then he wins the penalty. And that's the funny thing about Darwin Núñez, that even in games where you don't think he's playing particularly well, he manages to bring those moments in that do make the difference. A lot of people talk about chaos when they talk about Darwin Núñez, and that's exactly what you get in moments last night. And Salah, like I just mentioned, can play pretty much with anyone else in that front three. But looking ahead to next season, when Liverpool hopefully will be firing in all competitions again, you are going to need those squad options, and the forward line is one of the areas that you've really got all the options at the moment. But if I'm looking at it objectively, I think if we had a really big game tomorrow, I think Salah would be on the left, Gakpo would be in the middle, and one of Diaz or Jota would be on the right, and that speaks to how solid that forward line is, and I don't think the manager will have any complaints.
You've already mentioned it, Harriet, but Trent Alexander-Arnold's new position just works, and you almost look now thinking maybe they could have done this sooner, because even in that transition from defence to attack, Connacht can clearly cover that kind of right hand side of that defence quite adeptly, and Van Dijk does similar. You almost wish, from Klopp's perspective, they had tried it earlier.
Yeah, there is obviously still teething problems, and at times, even last night, especially against Tottenham, you look back to Nottingham Forest as well, there's times where both Van Dijk and Connacht in particular, because he's playing on that right-hand side, have got a little bit overexposed. Sometimes Robertson doesn't know how high forward he can push. It's really impacted everyone on the pitch, but you have to say that the positives are outweighing the negatives massively. And in particular, for me, in relation to two players, and one of them is Trent himself, who has the vision from the middle of the pitch. He's able to really cross the ball from any area he wants. He's able to take a little bit more time on the ball. Literally, it's been so impressive. And not only him, I think Curtis Jones is another one who's really benefited, playing in this more free role where he doesn't have to worry too much about the defensive side of his game. He's been rewarded for that 6 consecutive starts in a row now. And yeah, it does seem to all be clicking. Will Jurgen Klopp think, I wish I'd tried this a bit earlier, considering the run of form, 6 wins on the bounce, that hasn't happened all season? Maybe, but it was a bit difficult with the personnel available. Konate was out for periods of time. I would not want to be playing the system every week without Konate, I'll be honest. There was a few midfielders missing. You didn't have at times Finian or Henderson firing. So it's kind of come in at the right time when players have hit a bit of form again and the players that are available match up to that. So I don't know if it would necessarily have worked as well earlier in the season. And I'm really interested to see if this is the thing that we continue with and persist with into next season, when hopefully new midfielders will be at the club as well.
Yeah, as you say, new midfielders will be at the club. Like you mentioned, Curtis Jones there. Like, what's his long-term future or medium-term future even at Liverpool? Like once Jurgen Klopp brings new players in, does he have a future? As you say, he's had consistent game time in recent matches, but how long will that last?
It's a funny one with Curtis Jones, because this season he's been really in and out of the squad even, and some people haven't known whether it's come down to injuries. He's obviously a young player, he's still learning his way, whether it's come down to form and him not being quite at the level he needs to be in the team. And then Jurgen Klopp spoke about him at length. I believe it was last week or the week before, and said the golden ticket into this team is working really hard off the ball, and that's exactly what you get from Curtis Jones. And he accepted that he's still got a lot to learn as a player at the age he is, but he's just performing so consistently well, particularly in this new role. And I wonder, I think he was asked actually the question himself, you're going to have new midfielders coming in, how do you feel about that? He is a player that has so much confidence in his own ability that he'd thrive with that competition. And looking into next season, yes, maybe he does become more of a squad player, maybe he does have to prove himself a little bit more, and he is still young and he can think, okay, I'm going to play and prove myself in the games I come in now, but I'm not a starting option every week. That's okay, he'll kind of accept that. That's what he's been for Liverpool the last 2 years. Although I suspect now he's had a taste of playing week in, week out and fulfilling his dream of being a consistent first team player for Liverpool, he's not going to want to give that up anytime soon. So expect a lot from Curtis Jones. People are comparing him to Wijnaldum and that kind of workman-like, really hard work off the ball, just a bit robust, but also got that attacking threat. And I can see that. I can see the comparison between the two. But yeah, it will be interesting looking ahead to next season in particular, how much he's used, how much he's able to impose himself on the starting 11. But also at the moment, we have no idea who the competition is going to be. And that's the big question.
It is. It really is. Just to tease this point out one last bit, it's great to be hardworking, as Klopp says. You do also need an athletic profile that allows you to be fast. And does he have good high-end speed? Is he, we don't really get access to the club's data and information. They must be impressed with him enough to keep him in the team, but do you think it's sufficiently high level that he could stay in the team?
I don't think Klopp would have started him in the last 6 games if he didn't think so. He has had other options available, as you can see, because he's not been playing him for the majority of the season. What I think's changed the most in the last probably even 12 months for Curtis Jones is his physicality. Because, as I mentioned before, he is still a young player. He was kind of growing into himself, into the role. His physicality and strength now on the ball is completely different to what it was even 12 months ago. And he has got that speed. Maybe not one of his top strengths when you look at some of the other players in the team, like someone like Mo Salah's pace, but definitely he has got that side to his game. And when he's allowed, as I mentioned, the freedom to roam forward a bit, that's when you really get the best out of Curtis Jones. We
saw more of a normal Liverpool last night compared to the frantic nature of that Spurs game, Harriet, which is probably something that Jurgen Klopp will be quite delighted with. More control, 1-0. Now, granted, the penalty controversial. Marco Silva certainly thought so after the match. But even from a pressing perspective, like you saw that from the front three that you mentioned, and even like Nunez had a chance at one point where Henderson closes down and wins the ball back. That's more of the Liverpool that we've become used to seeing.
It was more of a routine win, wasn't it? Well, less of an exciting one maybe, but I think a lot of Liverpool fans on a Wednesday night midweek game, rescheduled one as well, would have taken that. It's funny because you look back to the Tottenham game and it was so frantic. There was total cruise control after 3-0 up. And then I almost think they don't know what to do with the lead at that point. They're thinking, well, do I keep on attacking? Do I defend a bit more? And they get stuck somewhere in the middle. Last night, they go 1-0 up, and the clear game plan for me is, okay, you just had a game a few days ago. You've got a game coming up in a few days' time. 1-0 is absolutely fine here. You don't need to go mad pushing for the second one and then going all out attack. What you do need to do is put constant pressure on the ball so that Fulham are not able to get a foot in the game. And that's what you see last night. And I think that's why the pressing game was more intense, why all the forward players are working hard in high areas of the pitch so they don't allow Fulham to break quickly on the counter-attack, which they'd have wanted to do. Yeah, I was impressed with the pressing. It is, like you mentioned, more of what you expect from a Jurgen Klopp side, and hasn't always been the case this season. So yeah, I was impressed with that side of it.
Alisson was crucial to the result last night as well, Harriet. Like a couple of big saves, one from Carlos Vinicius relatively late on as well. I think that someone said it was his 12th clean sheet of the season, joint third in the amongst Premier League goalkeepers. He's level with Aaron Ramsdale. So he just keeps going and going. And from an Irish perspective, I guess we always look at Caoimhín Kelleher as someone we'd love to get more game time. Maybe a loan move now for him is the only option, or a move away, generally speaking. But Alisson, his performances have been really, really good.
Yeah, it's a shame for Kelleher, isn't it? Because we've seen in flashes what an impressive goalkeeper he can be. And when we're in FA Cup and League Cup competitions, he gets his chance to shine. But Alisson is such an impressive talent. And you come away from games like last night and you maybe don't reflect on it enough, because he keeps us in that. 2 huge saves, one crucial one really close to the end of the game where you think you could have left Anfield in a state of disappointment last night, and he is the reason you're kept in it. But he's been that for most of the season. I don't think we'd even be in the conversation still, and maybe we're a little bit out of it now, but for top 4 if Alisson wasn't there, because he is always on the ball. And yes, he's made a couple of mistakes this season, but haven't all of Liverpool's defence. But generally, he's been the most consistent performer. For me, looking back on the season, he's probably the player of the season as well, and another really impressive performance last night.
You look at Fabinho as well as another player that just performed and probably brings the level of players around him up when he plays well. He's one of those impact players that just clearly has a massive impact on the younger players, especially in that Liverpool squad.
Yeah, Fabinho is an interesting one as well, because he's someone that a lot of people this season have been criticising, saying he hasn't got the legs maybe anymore at his age, and also the amount he's played over the last few seasons to be an integral part of the Liverpool team week in, week out. But he's another one who I think with the new system playing alongside Trent in that kind of double 6 pivot, whatever you want to call it, has been really impressive and looked like he's got just a little bit more solidity in his game. I still think there are a few weaknesses. I think his recovery pace is a little bit shorter than what it used to be. I think his tackles in one-on-one situations aren't maybe as sure as they used to be. Those things are probably natural considering the amount of football he has played over the last few years. And you think ahead, and someone like Fabinho next season, like you mentioned, he's a really good player to have around young talent. You think, could he just be someone who they learn off, maybe doesn't start games and play the entirety of 90-minute games, but comes on for 30-minute periods to shore things up? Maybe someone like Milner now, kind of fulfill the role that he's playing. I don't know how kind of open he'd be to that, considering he'll want to be fighting for his place in the starting 11 every week, but definitely an integral part of the squad that you'd look to keep around.
Harry, a quick word about Liverpool in the WSL, beaten last night by Chelsea. No shame obviously in losing to this Chelsea team, but a mid-table, it's going to be a mid-table season, establishing themselves properly in the WSL. I guess at the start of the year that's probably about as much as they might have hoped for.
Yeah, I think the women have a bit of a plan over the next sort of 3, 4, 5 years. And the first year was really consolidating their position in the WSL, making sure that they stayed up, making sure that they weren't dragged into any late relegation battles. And not mathematically, but realistically, I think they have solidified their place in the WSL for next season. They could have done with a win against Leicester, and actually that turned out quite badly, a 4-0 defeat. However, I've been so impressed with the women this season, how they performed, particularly since January. The transfer window was really impressive for them. Gemma Bonner, you see again last night, even though they did lose, that she is so defensively solid. She's a really impressive person to have back in, really brings that captaincy and that leadership as well. Fuka Nagano in that midfield area as well, a really good signing. So you think if they can get a few more of that really high calibre signing in summer, next year, hopefully push a little bit higher up the table. The year after, maybe go for those Champions League spots. They need to keep working really hard, because it wasn't good enough that they were in the Championship and they weren't fighting in the WSL. Now they're back there. Let's stay there. Let's keep pushing on. Difficult defeat last night to Chelsea, especially as it came in the last stages, and not many people would have expected them to go 1-0 up, but they'll have been proud of themselves for that performance. And Kirby as well in goal, making her debut and coming up with some really good saves. So yeah, they can't take too much sadness from it, but they have got a few difficult games now between now and the end of the season.
And just in time, several Irish players back and available for selection as well.
Yeah, exactly. There is, isn't there? Yeah, I think Nifahi, the captain, she's been out for a few games, and hopefully she can make a few appearances before the end of the season, because we've missed her a lot.
Just in time for the World Cup too. Great stuff. Thanks a million for joining us, Harriet. Cheers.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
Harriet Prior, the Anfield Wrap there. If you want to get in touch, 087 9180 180 is the WhatsApp number, or you can get us on YouTube comments or at Off the Ball AM. OTB AM live with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave of your money back. Neon Night Edition available now. Manchester United feeling a little bit uneasy about the surge in form from Liverpool, or nah, it's too late. Too little, too late, lads. Home and hose in the Champions League qualification race.
No, I don't know. United, like this game against Brighton away tonight is a quote unquote banana skin. I think Brighton will fancy it.
Yeah, I think they will. I don't think it's a banana skin at all. I think I would say Brighton will not just fancy their chances. I'm going to check the odds there while you chat amongst yourself.
But I'm trying to think, even if United lose that match, like you look at the table, United have 32 games played, 63 points. That's 4 points ahead of Liverpool with 2 less games played than them. So even if they were to lose to Brighton tonight, they'd still be 4 ahead of Liverpool with a game in hand. It's not over. Like, if Liverpool continue the form that they've been on,
well, they're winning every game. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, if they win their remaining 4 matches, then this will run close. United have the FA Cup final to think about, albeit that's not till the season ends against Manchester City. But I do think if Liverpool win those 4 matches, it's going to go down to the wire.
Yeah, Brighton are favourites. So I mean, they should be favourites.
Yeah,
Brighton are odds on. Man United are 12-5. So
you look at Liverpool's fixtures. So they've Brentford at home this Saturday, Leicester away.
Who's this? Sorry,
Liverpool. So Brentford home, Leicester away, Villa at home, and Southampton away in the final game. So like, you're going to have a relegated Southampton on the final day, when United on the final day play. It's Fulham at home. So again, it's a home match. It's not the worst. But United's fixtures aren't terrible, apart from Brighton tonight. West Ham away, which is tricky. Wolves at home, Bournemouth away, Chelsea at home, and then Fulham at home. So United's fixtures aren't awful. You would say that they should pick up some points from those, enough to probably get top 4.
Yeah, they've done the hard work now. To blow it from here would be one of the all-time great swoons. Tender Chicken 56 makes the key point in all of the Jude Bellingham conversations. Lads, outside football, if you had 2 options to live, Madrid or Manchester, where are you choosing? Slightly biased Irishman in Madrid.
Well, that's fair.
Manchester's improved greatly.
It's a lovely city.
Over the
weather-wise, maybe not quite Madrid standards, but
Madrid is amazing.
Yeah, but I think the point Colin made about the English media and the press and the hype train, it's just not as big if you're playing in La Liga. Like, week in, week out, you're not being analysed to great detail. So I think from that perspective, it makes sense for a 19-year-old.
Well, the other thing is, there are 2 full-time sports football newspapers every day analysing everything, and he will feel a little bit claustrophobic in Madrid, but maybe he'll be able to ignore that if he doesn't read those papers. The Goldfish Bowl will be specific but different in Madrid. They obviously turned on Bale. Bale still had an incredible career there, but the media did turn on him with all the golf. So maybe just don't get a golf simulator in your house, or if you do, don't tell everybody you have one.
Possibly, yeah. Focus on the football. I'd like to see where he ends up. He will end up in the Premier League at some point, Bellingham. Maybe in 3 or 4 years. But I'd be fascinated to see which club he joins. Maybe Birmingham City get back the way up to the Premier League, and he goes back and helps his old hometown club. They have his jersey number retired.
So
of course,
he can't go back. Yeah, that's it.
Just pick up the old number. Maybe take it out of retirement just for him.
Can't do that. No, you've already made your decision. When you asked who the best manager in the Premier League was, did they know Sam Allardyce was back at Leeds? No, we didn't. That's podcast lad to Leeds, using our platform to advertise yours. Yeah, fair play to you. Mm-hmm. God loves a trier. Gotta hustle, baby. Bruce Robbo fan club says Bellingham's not a playmaker. He wouldn't lace Modric's boots. What is that lad Shane on?
Sorry,
Shane's a bit tired and emotional because he was out last night.
I don't mean they're similar in playing styles. Of course they're not positionally, but I mean in terms of getting on the ball, dictating play, and impacting players around them. Like Bellingham does get on the ball. He certainly has an impact on the match. You can't disagree with that.
It's an impact on the match. Is not getting on the ball.
No, but like,
these are different things. Look, it's okay.
When he gets on the ball, he gets on the ball, he inspires players around him. Similar to Modric. He's not the same type of player as Luka Modric.
Ji-sung Park.
By the way, I don't think any player is similar to Modric. What he does is quite unique.
Okay, apology accepted.
Yeah, he's no Ji-sung Park for sure.
We've done that one. How good it is, Colin, that Haaland has broken his best mate Clive Allen's scoring record, asks Bobby Dwyer.
Oh yeah.
Typing through his bleary eyes this morning. Yeah, okay. So if you want to get in touch, we'd love to hear from you. 087 9180 180 is the WhatsApp number, as I said. And you can also get us on youtube.com/offtheball. We're turning our attention to the Connacht football final. It's a relatively novel pairing of Sligo and Galway this weekend, and I'm delighted to say Mark Breheny and Finian Hanley are with us this morning. Mark, we're going to start with you. Good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning, Ger. How are you? How are you keeping?
What's your level of excitement heading into the game this weekend?
Yeah, very excited. Obviously, our first final now in 8 years, so I think there's a great buzz around the town. Great buzz just chatting to people about it. You can see the flags beginning to slowly appear around shops, some houses as well around the town and the county. So, yeah, we're going to a final where we're going to be big underdogs. But the overall feeling is this is progression. It's great to be there, and let's see how it goes.
I think it's fair to feel about that progression, that this isn't just a kind of random flaring up, because the various under 20 and under age teams over the last number of years have done well, and you're coming to this final off the back of an incredible winning streak and promotion. So irrespective of what happens in the final, this isn't an island, it feels like.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the 9 games in a row that we're on, that winning streak is very, very important. Backed up, as you said, with between schools football, Summerhill, our under 20s. There's just a good feeling out there amongst the GAA community in Sligo. So yeah, I think Sunday again is going to be an important progression, especially for this group. There are a lot of mid-20 guys. They've had a tough time. That one particular year didn't actually participate in the Connacht Championship due to COVID. So, that group, they had to come in as well at a stage where, I know when I was playing myself, there was a lot of guys kind of coming late 20s, early 30s, and this particular group were only a lot of young guys coming in, 19, 20, and they've had to learn a lot in a quick period. So for them now and for Sligo to progress, I think these lads have to stay around the next 3-4 years to bring the under-20s through, and some of these very prosperous minors as well.
In a way, right, and I don't know if this is going to be, I don't mean this in any way insulting, but would it actually been better for that group to have come through the Tailteann Cup this year and to use that winning experience against teams of a similar standard? Because, look, maybe Kildare at home is the game they're going to look at and go, yeah, we can actually beat these guys. So maybe I'm completely wrong, but if there was silverware at the end of this, or a realistic chance of it, would that have been better for the group at that age, do you think?
I don't think so, and it's probably going back to maybe my own career, because unless you play against the better teams, Ger, you won't really find out what you're about as a player, as a group. So I think we need to get to a stage where we're back in Connacht finals. We need to learn a lot from this Galway game, however it goes. I think going back to 2015, we bet Roscommon the Division 2 champions at the time, and then we won that game, and I suppose we were on a huge high. We had a lot of young guys and a mixture of ages that day as well, but now we got obviously a fairly hammering in the Connacht final against Mayo. But within a few weeks we played Tyrone in Croke Park, and that game ended up, I think it was 21-15 or so. So for me, you learned a lot, obviously, and there was a lot of soul searching after a Mayo game in that kind of final, but we bounced back quickly. We learned a good bit, and if we got another game after Tyrone that particular year, I think we would have learned more again. So I think it's important that we're at this stage, especially for the development and the growth of a lot of these players. And again, going back to when I started off, I think the restructuring of the leagues back in the late 90s was a huge help for Sligo. What I'm talking about that is where we would have played the likes of Dublin, Kerry in the leagues around that period, and that brought it lovely then into the Connacht Championship, and you were just getting used to playing against teams that are moving the ball quicker and at a faster pace, and I think that just lent itself very, very well for an important run in the early noughties, and probably backed up then with the Connacht final of 2007.
We have Finian Hanley on the line this morning as well, and Finian, similar question to you as we started off with Mark, like in terms of the excitement levels in Galway for this one. I know Pádraig Joyce's reaction after the semi-final win probably highlighted how important the Connacht Championship still is to Galway, and I think you're one off Mayo in the Connacht GAA Roll of Honour, so there's motivation there ahead of the weekend.
There is, yeah. I think there's a couple of factors here. We weren't expecting to be playing Roscommon in the first match. I suppose we were getting ready in Salt Hill for a Galway and Mayo extravaganza, which never materialised when the Rossies turned over Mayo.
So were Mayo, it turns out, Finian.
Exactly. So that was a bit of a shot in the dark. But obviously I was in Hyde Park, and it was a cagey affair. It didn't have the feel of a Connacht Championship. It was very, very obviously defensive. Both teams are quite getting men behind the ball. It was cagey in the first half. Someone said it'll definitely be 5-5 or 6-5 at half time. Turned out 7-3 I think it was, and even though Roscommon came at Galway were fairly professional. You could see that they're a little bit further ahead in their development. With regards to the excitement, I think the excitement was coming into the Roscommon game more so than it was this weekend. We're not. There isn't that huge buzz for a Connacht final, but I do think for Pádraig and the lads, the significance of this weekend will be that Galway haven't won 2 in a row in 20 years. So in Connacht, which is quite amazing, really. So 2002 and 3 was the last time we did back to back in Connacht. I think I'm right, but so that'll be significant to get that monkey off the back and do back to back. The overall standings in Connacht, it'll be Galway, Mayo mostly that win these championships. So I don't think that way is heavy. But there isn't huge excitement around here this weekend, to be honest. It's a bit like it's a foregone conclusion with Galway, such heavy favourites, and obviously Sligo, progressing really well, but being in Division 4. There is still a gap there, even though Sligo are starting to close it. 2 under-20s back to back. But I think Galway, with regards to their development, having played in the All-Ireland final, the league final, are a bit further ahead. And, I think people in Galway are thinking this will be probably cagey in the first half, but comfortable in the end.
Because last year was so successful for Galway, obviously success this year is going to be going one step further, Finian. The team seems to have evolved happily through having players injured or away for whatever reason. New players have come in, old players have come back. It kind of feels like kind of Magnificent Seven style rallying of the troops for a massive surge this year. Is that the sense in Galway as well, that actually this has been handled very well?
Yeah, definitely. I think the club scene in Galway is quite strong at the minute. We have 4 really good football teams that could compete at a national stage with Salthill, Mycullen, Currafin and Mountbellew, and a lot of those players are in the county setup. We have 5 from Salthill in the county setup, so and they're all getting game time. So they've brought a bit of freshness, but Ian Burke is back, Peter Cook is back. Huge additions to this panel, and I think Galway are rallying to go one extra. One thing I will say though, Ger, is that last year was probably premature for Galway. We got over Armagh on penalties, a tight affair against Derry. We didn't play a Dublin or a Kerry. Maybe it was a year ahead of where we should be, but look, we are where we are. We have that experience now, and the talk in Galway is certainly about All Irelands.
Mark, just listen to what Finian's saying there and how heavy favourites Galway are. Is there a belief in Sligo that they can win this game on Sunday? Because I'm looking at the bookies and they have Galway as 12-point favourites for the match, but is there actually a belief within Sligo that they can turn this one?
I think there's a belief that we could put in a good performance, Shane, and that's what we're looking for. I think Tony McEnany has been quoted in saying that it is going to be progression over this group stage. This Galway game, will it come maybe a year or two too early for us? Possibly, but I think what I've seen in the league has been a lot of professional approaches to games between. I think the London game away was one that stood out for me. I think they won 110-6, and that game in particular just went away to London to win it. I know obviously London are no big power, but at the same time it was just going over there, do the job. I mean, comprehensively bet New York, where a lot of people were doubting, because Sligo were close to Leitrim in the league at the end of the league, and New York got the better of Leitrim. That could have been a tight game in Marquich Park, but Sligo did a very professional job there as well. So overall, I mean, the 9 games in a row, they're growing confidence. I'm just going back to one under 21 game back in 2017, where a lot of Sligo's panel are there at the moment, and they played in that particular day, and they played Galway in that under 21 final. It went to extra time, and even the names that were on that Galway team, a good few of them are still there. You've got Killian McDade and Peter Cook and Sean Kelly. So I think our lads have matched up against these guys before at underage level. Just that gap between the experience of playing in Division 1, obviously in Division, at the higher divisions, Division 1, Division 2, would probably come against Sligo this Sunday. But at the same time, it's a real development stage for this group. It's great to get to a Connacht final. We're 8 years without one, and I think there's just a good anticipation and a good buzz around Sligo that they're going to go and fully back the team on Sunday.
There are players in that Sligo forward line though that certainly the Galway defenders will have to be wary of and conscious of. The big score they put up at Markovic against New York, albeit as you say it's New York, but it was wet conditions and they put up a right bit of a score. Even Patrick O'Connor, Niall Murphy, Pat Spillane as well. these lads are wiry players, and Galway will have to have a plan for them, you'd imagine, Mark.
Yeah, I mean, I think Paul's choice would be naive not to have plans. I mean, you look at the scores even in the National League. You've Sean Caravan in 35, Murphy 28. Pat Spillane has come in. He scored 2-11 for play. You've got Paddy O'Connor 1-11. So a bit like Galway, if Shane Walsh is off on a particular day, Comer steps up, or Ian Burke now is coming into the fray as well. But so if Niall Murphy is having an off, then Paddy O'Connor's chipping in, straight away, immediately with a few scores, and Pat Spillane is there as well. And so you look at our forward line, you've got Niall Murphy and Paddy O'Connor, both former midfielders. Paddy O'Connor played, I felt, a very good game against Tom Parsons in 2017 in midfield. Niall Murphy was a young 21-year-old in 2015 when we bet Roscommon and got to that Connacht final and did a very, very good job in Division 3 league for us that time. But both of them are inside in the full forward line now. And I'm just probably thinking with Tony McEntee's own team of Armagh back in the early noughties, of the two men inside with Stevie McDonald and Ronan Clark, that I suppose Niall and Paddy wouldn't be the 6'3", 6'4" typical midfielders, but they're rangy guys. They're good in the air, and I think if we can get good early ball in on Galway on Sunday, we can cause them a little bit of trouble.
Is the hope that Tony McEntee can lead the team in a Louth style run over the next couple of years, now that they've free from the COVID disruption and missing the championship, and actually getting a good run at it?
Yeah, I think so. I was involved as a selector with Tony the first year in COVID, and it was very disruptive. We played Louth. It was the divisions were broke up into kind of groups of 4 back then, and so we had Louth, Antrim and Leitrim. Now, we bet Leitrim in our first game. We felt we were going well, and we had Antrim, and that was, I think, it just went right down to the wire. They bet us by a point up in Corrigan Park. And then we went to Louth, and I have to say, one of the best cycle performances I had seen in years in the first half. And we were well in control of the game. And they got a goal immediately from the throw-in in the second half. And they ended up beating us by a few points on the day. But I just seen Louth progression all of a sudden. They got the bounce of getting out of that group that particular year. They went from 3 to 2. And you could see then just the confidence growing, and Mickey Hart obviously instilling a good game plan amongst them. So I think if the big thing for us was getting out of Division 4 this year, everything now is really big bonus territory. There's no pressure on us going in on Sunday. And as I said, I'm hoping for just a good performance. And I think we have a lot of forwards there that can cause these Galway defenders a little bit of trouble on the day.
Finian, you mentioned the fact that last year might have been a little bit ahead of schedule. What do you see in this year to give you some confidence that actually, if they do come up against a Dublin or a Kerry, that they have enough different style of play within a match that they're actually going to be able to adapt to the challenges, the particular challenges that they will throw up?
I think we have a bigger panel this year, Ger, to be honest. Obviously, John Maher's been a revelation. He's been knocking around the club scene for 6 or 7 years. He's from Salthill, but he's come in this year and really, lit up. Killian McDay got injured, and he's lit up the midfield area with Paul Conroy. We have options there with Peter Cook. We have big men. We have Matthew Tierney. We can put a lot of guys out to midfield if we need to. I think up front, particularly, you'll have Ian Burke, Damien Comer, probably, and Shane Walsh, given their performance the last day. But you've Tom O'Culhan, Desi Keneally, and obviously Robert Finnerty on the bench. So you've got another front three to come in there, Ger. So look, we have a bit more experience, obviously, in players who've played in the final. But then we've got a really, really good supporting cast at the minute, with guys who've got significant game time against big teams in Division 1. And I do think that our counter-attacking game this year has gone another level. Last year we were a little bit trying to figure it out after coming off the back of a more attacking style when Porrick came in first. So from what I've seen this year, we've gone extreme at times with 15 men inside our own 45, really nailing it down and going on extreme counter. And it looks like they've developed that another bit further, which gives them probably a better defensive structure and a better foundation. They're not conceding as much. They're not scoring as much either. But yeah, I think in tight games, if you keep it to 50, 60 minutes, we do have the forwards then to go and push on.
I think it's a slightly underrated narrative here about Porrick Joyce displaying a lack of ego in bringing Cian O'Neill on board and saying everything I said when I arrived here. I might have been a little bit, I might have jumped the gun a little bit with we're going to go out free flow and attacking football a la the 98 team, and then it's like, actually that's not going to work for us, so I need to rethink this. And Cian O'Neill is obviously a big persona, a big personality. You can see on the sideline that sometimes the conversations are heated, but not everybody has the balls to do that and actually, yeah, you know what, I'm ready to have somebody who will fight me on the sideline and go, actually, you know what, I think I'm right and I have the conviction of my views. It's rare enough that a manager has the emotional intelligence to do that.
Definitely, and obviously Pádraig is a god in Galway, and he's been looked up to by everyone as a player, now as a manager. He's done it at every level, and after the first 2 years they didn't go great. There was a hope that football may change into the tiki-taka or the extreme attacking, but look, it hasn't, and maybe it won't for a while. And so, you know, to allow Cian O'Neill, who's a super experienced coach, has been there on loads of fronts with different teams, Mayo and Tip and Kerry, and got over the line to, you know, the reign. I don't know what level of expertise he brings to the whole setup with regards to the finer detail, but you know, it looks like they are finely tuned machine that everyone knows their role when they're without the ball, when they're with the ball, you know, how they move into attack, how they move into defence. You know, Rory Gallagher's doing it in Derry as well. So, you know, Pádraig has really, you know, he brought in the structures. He's managing it really well. There's a good buzz in Galway. There's development squads. There's, you know, they're trying to raise money for the team, trying to raise money for underage. You know, Pádraig's at the forefront of that. You know, in chatting to him, he's trying to do everything to leave this in a really, really good place and get over the line to win that All Ireland Championship as well. So. Fair play to him. He has it in a really good place. There's everyone singing off the same hymn sheet, and he has them all, you know, really chomping to get in and play. And I assume that Cian O'Neill is a big part of that as well.
Yeah, no, definitely fair play to him. Fair play to you both for joining us this morning. Enjoy the game, folks. I won't ask you for predictions. We have a fair sense that it's going to be a Galway win, but maybe it's the manner of the performance really that everybody's looking forward to. Mark, best of luck this weekend. Finian, thanks a million for joining us too.
Thanks, sir.
It's Mark Breheny and Finian Hanley giving us their thoughts on it at 8:41. It is time to join John Duggan. John.
Ger and Shane, how are you all doing?
Welcome back.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. Fit and tanned.
Well, I don't know about the tan, because if I was to tan, it'd probably take a year. And probably take as long as it would take me to grow a beard. But yeah, I got a bit of sun down in Spain and Gibraltar, and it's amazing. I feel like with every passing year, what was sun? What's that thing? That sun? It seems to be the greater disparity than ever between our climate and climates of other countries that actually have sun.
Bit of vitamin D into your
yeah,
job.
like it felt like about 300 years since I'd seen sun, so it was great to see it.
Bit of vitamin G as well, judging by your Instagram. It's hard to beat the Guinness as well.
The Guinness is actually had before I left
these
shores. I would never drink Guinness
outside
of Ireland.
That would be disrespectful.
Actually, the pints over in responsibly. The pints over in Spain are only €4, south of Spain, so it's not bad, you know.
Yeah, it's how the other half live, John.
Well, that's it. And you got the sun, you got the tapas. It's definitely worth recommending.
You're in Gibraltar as well.
Gibraltar, yeah.
Yeah.
So you just walk across the border.
Yeah.
From the EU into a different jurisdiction.
No passports needed.
Oh, you need to share the passport. Yeah, you need to share the passport. So hope you guys are well and
all good. Yeah. We haven't talked about the golf and the end of the great Ryder Cup careers of Westwood and Poulter and Sergio Garcia. They officially are over.
Yes, 28 Ryder Cup appearances between them, and they all resigned their European Tour memberships yesterday. There's been sanctions being levied on them for joining the Rebel Live Tour. It went to tribunal. The tribunal found in favour of the European Tour, and they just said, you know what, we're going to call it a day, and they all quit en masse. So I think there's I suppose we're going to see now the actual, because with the Masters we had Brooks Koepka, Phil Mickelson, Patrick Reed all contending, all in the one happy place. But we're going to see now in Rome later this year that some of those familiar faces will not be there, much to the chagrin, I think, of someone like John Ram, who would wanted to play with Garcia. Lots of arguments pro and against. Should you be sole traders, free traders? Players being able to play at other tours before. And then there's also the fairness aspect for the current European Tour pros who don't have access to that live pot. So look, it's it. That's it. One thing I remember what Padraig Harrington said, what was the Ryder Cup meant to symbolise? Was it Europe against the USA? Was it the plucky underdog? It was European golf. And he had said it was the European Tour versus the USA, and that's what he always felt it was. It was the projection of strength of the European Tour, Seve, Faldo, Woosnam, Harrington later on himself, Monty, and that's why I think that the European Tour have acted the way they have, because they really see the Ryder Cup as their thing.
Yeah, the only counter argument to that is that all the best European golfers now play on the PGA Tour.
Yes.
So it's really the PGA Tour's best European golfers versus the best American golfers, and so I get it. They own this thing. They organise it, and if you go and you join a different organisation, it's like WWE and one of those other wrestling promotions that I can't name.
Westwood was making the point in the Telegraph that like the top 10 golfers of the European Tour now get an automatic membership of the PGA Tour. So it is seen very much as a little brother now.
Yeah.
And that's the way it is.
And I think that maybe those new tournament schedule, maybe into the future they realise that Europe is an untapped market and they make more money for American golf. I don't know how it's going to end up.
The Scottish Open is now part of the PGA Tour.
Yeah.
Xander Schauffele won that last year. But we see Rory, Shane and Seamus Power all playing in North Carolina today.
Yeah.
I've got 3 tips for that, by the way. I didn't have time because I'm just back today to do the podcast. But for the Wells Fargo Championship, Cameron Young, 4 each way, 20-1. He's knocking down the door of a victory. And I also have Ricky Fowler, the comeback kid, 33-1 for 3 each way. And Patrick Rogers at 80-1 for 3 each way, €20 virtually. So if one of these win, this is actually officially, this is not an unofficial event for Virtual Insanity. This is an official event. Might not be a podcast, but it's an official event. It'll count towards the losses when they lose.
Okay. Hopefully they're going to win.
Did you enjoy watching Tottenham while I was away?
Oh, Jesus. The Tottenham. What do you say about Tottenham?
Yes.
The fact that Spursy has become a describing word.
Well, but when you become the object of ridicule, it's a terrible place to be as any kind of sporting organisation or entity. That's how bad it's got.
Who do you want to be the manager?
I don't really care who the manager is. I think the issue's at the board. And we're looking at a 12th manager under the current chairperson. And I don't know if there's ever going to be an accountability towards Daniel Levy or the board for their decision making, especially since they sacked Pochettino.
It is funny how it's Daniel Levy and not Joe Lewis who gets the opprobrium, though, right? It's not. It was never. So it was a bit Ed Woodward, but it was really the Glazers, and it was. I don't remember who the chief executive at the moment at Liverpool is. It was always Fenway who were the ones who were.
Yes.
Is it just because Levy shows up to the games and shows up for work?
I think that Levy is very much the decision maker and the kingmaker there, and he's allowed to do that. Whereas with the Glazers, I think Joe Glazer is heavily involved in the decision making, and I think Todd Bowley or Bailey, whatever you want to call him, is heavily involved in decision making at Chelsea. I think Joe Lewis is a lot more detached as an owner. Therefore, and because he lives in the Caribbean, therefore I don't think he gets the level of scrutiny that he should as the ultimate person who decides.
I think he gets a bit of a free pass, and
yes.
And ultimately, we'll see if there was definitely rumours that the club was interested in further investment. Maybe they were just sending out those
smoke signals,
weather balloons to check the weather and not to spy.
Look, Daniel Levy's a great business person. Like Tottenham was worth 20 million. In 2001, then when they took it over, it's worth 2 billion now. The stadium is amazing.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it's all about the product. It's football.
I do think that if they got the manager right, like we were talking about this.
I think the recruitment is. I think is just as important as the manager at any club.
It's true, but a good manager will have some influence over that. So they chose Nuno.
Yes.
Over Ten Hag.
Yes.
Right. They were competitors at the same time, and they got rid of Mourinho. And they replaced him with Nuno. Is that right? Was there somebody in between?
No, only caretaker, Ryan Mason, caretaker.
Yeah. Things, yeah. And Nuno was basically. We had this conversation, I think, either with Colm or with Phil recently on the football kickoff. It was like, you don't like what Mourinho is doing, and then you replace him with a mini-me who's not actually as good as him. That didn't make any sense. So if they got the recruitment of the manager right, you can see the impact that somebody like Ten Hag has, where there's a credibility around the decision making, and there's a style of play that everybody knows what they're supposed to do, and there's a responsibility that. Look, the Paratici thing definitely speaks to a club not being particularly well run.
Well, they've got Scott Munnan now from Australia, there's too much of a focus on the continental structure. They had this with Santini and Arneson back in the mid-2000s. He actually took an old-style manager like Harry Redknapp to come in and sort Spurs out for the first time, and then Pochettino pretty much had all control. But I just do think that the chairperson, if you watch the All or Nothing documentary, he's a huge figure there. He's a huge presence. And I think his presence, there's a friction between his presence and his ideas and the manager football side. I think he needs to step back, run the business as brilliantly as he has, but you got to let the football people do the football thing.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
What about this free-to-air stuff? Have you got views on this on the GAA?
I think it's really interesting that nobody on the RTE panel has complained about it now that it's...
I saw Shane McGrath writing about the buffering there on the website yesterday. I'd like to, just like to see a smoother service from the streaming service.
On the GAA Go.
Yes.
I definitely feel like that it's a brand new thing and it's the right step for the organisation to make, for the GAA to make. I just think it's really interesting how there was a campaign against Sky that was happily endorsed by the main live broadcast was always given out about it, and now that's ceased. Now that RTE are shareholders in the new one, it's like, oh, all right, now nobody cares about it. That's interesting, isn't it? Or maybe nobody's allowed to talk about it, even if they do care about it.
Even how punditry is developed as well. This is a conversation that came up with Souness last night. They played a clip of him and Giles and Dunphy going at it, talking about Arsenal years ago, and how you just don't see that anymore. And you certainly don't see it in Sky. And Souness's point was that Sky have reporters out of training grounds in trying to interview players and managers every week, so you can't exactly go the
access last night
direction.
the City had for like Haaland coming down, gave him the microphone, away you go.
It's brilliant, isn't it?
It's great, but it does lead to a closeness that sometimes can be a negative.
Quite pally.
And like I'd love to this. Like I think Jay Grow is a great idea, and I went on the radio a few weeks ago and you talked before I left, and I just said it's a great idea. Right, I'm not here to bash it in any way. I'd love to see the Connacht football final and the Munster football final and GAA go this weekend, because there's no jeopardy whatsoever to those games. The games with the jeopardy are Dublin, Wexford and Cork Tip. They're the games that should be on TV, because they're the games with the jeopardy, not the other two games when we have those teams all in the Sam Maguire Cup. So that's just my...
But I think that's just the provincial. Then you're really just saying the provincials don't matter.
Well, the provincials should be there anyway.
Well, then nobody's going to subscribe. I subscribed last week in the middle of the Limerick Clare game, because I was like,
got to see this.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the whole point. That's like, it's good strategy. They're going to take a short period of pain where everybody complains about it. People will migrate over. They'll have it on. It'll be seamless for them once it's on. They'll improve they'll do a better deal with Amazon Web Service to make the streaming better, or whoever it is that's doing it in the background, and away we go. Like,
What if Clare beat Kerry in the Munster final? What if Sligo beat Galway in the Connacht final? They're unlikely results, but they would be famous results. And then you turn around in 20 years and go, do you remember that game wasn't on TV? Remember when Sligo won the Connacht final against...
Nobody's watching TV anymore. You don't watch TV.
I want to watch sport on TV.
But you don't watch TV. Like, most people aren't watching TV anymore. They're watching streaming services. Like, that's how the world has gone. And for the GAA not to have a version of this, everybody's like, oh, you're a backwards organisation. You have
I'm not against GAA Go, but I think these games need to be terrestrial.
They don't. Which games? Like, all the games that you decide.
Every single provincial final needs to be terrestrial.
Why though? Like,
tradition.
I think the games.
Sure, let's show the interprovincial. Let's show the Railway Cup. Like, tradition, blah blah blah.
No, but this could be a massive weekend for Sligo or for Clare.
But those games are on TV. They are,
and that's my point. They should be. I feel. Jeopardy or not, I guess there are bigger games in hurling this weekend that have jeopardy, but I still think provincial finals,
I think
anything can happen.
GAA needs to be able to put the best games that they can behind the paywall, otherwise there's no point in them having the organisation in existence. And we're all going to have to get used to the fact that there is a significant portion of games behind the paywall, and it'll be increasing. But what they'll also do is they'll start showing loads more stuff that nobody else would show. Maybe TG Carr would show, but maybe it'll be a combination of extra games, and that's where the value comes in. And all the big games ultimately will be on, hopefully, BBC as well, so it's proper competition for RT, because we know without competition there's just no innovation.
Yeah, it just frustrates me that you're watching matches like league matches in the spring on TG Carr, which does a great service, and then you're watching club games in the autumn that don't have the weight and the importance of Clare, Limerick and Cork Tipperary, which I believe should be available to the people as much as possible.
So is it your view then, John, that like if a game reaches a certain threshold of interest that it should be free to air?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, Limerick Clare wasn't on TV last weekend. Derry Monaghan wasn't on TV. That's a big provincial semi-final. Wasn't even on the BBC. So like, there's a lot of big
why
games
that wasn't on the
going
BBC? Was there a reason given for that?
I don't know whether it was the snooker maybe being on clashing with it. I doubt it, because that was at 5 o'clock, that match. And the session in the snooker didn't start till 7. So I don't know what the reason was, but certainly those games should be possibly. I agree with John there.
Slower Riot says, JD, class act, OTB's finest. As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a presenter who spoke with absolute clarity. Don Duggan.
Thank you very much.
Gotta love Don Duggan, says Conor Pratt. There was a lot of Don Duggan on holidays, was there?
Well, do you not follow my Instagram? There's a bit of Don. That's what 4 Euro Pints does, and obviously responsibly, as I keep on saying. No, it's Punchestown's great, lads. It's just
cigars and hats and the whole lot.
Yeah, like I don't smoke. I don't believe in smoking. I think it's a disgusting habit. But if a cigar's put right in front of you, and you said, okay, well, here's a cigar, and it's a sunny day, and you're off, and there's horses running around you, and there's people like Johnny Ward around the place. You got to have a cigar.
And many hats.
And it's like Bill Clinton said, I didn't inhale.
8:55 this morning here, OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Got the ultimate shaver, your money back Neon Night edition is available now. Plenty more Don Duggan and John Duggan coming your way on Saturday afternoon on Off the Ball on News Talk. Tonight, Tommy Rooney, Paddy Andrews and James O'Donoghue are in glorious Technicolor, bringing the football pod to Killarney for a live road show at the Great Southern Hotel. I think it's a sellout, but there's always one or two people who don't show up that you can sneak in at the back if you obviously buy your ticket. Very special guest Mark O'Shea. The Football Pod is in partnership with AIB, proud sponsors of the Football, Hurling and Camogie All-Ireland Club Championships. Check out the hashtag #TheToughest for more. Up next, Cameron Hill previews Ulster Connacht. First, Fiona Hayes alongside Rory O'Connor and Will on Wednesday Night Rugby last night, reflecting on Ireland's disastrous Six Nations campaign.
What people don't understand is I'm banging this drum for about 6 or 7 years now, and I'm constantly talking about what's on the inside. And I just felt, and Rory touched on it as well, obviously there's outside stuff, but I felt watching these players that they had a lot more in them than what I was seeing. You know, like, you can talk about the outside stuff, but they're playing the game and they want to look and analyse their own game. And at times, yeah, things improved, but they'd be very disappointed. I mean, a national team needs to have a good line out if you're in camp that much. You know, like little things like that. And I think, you know, as the tournament went on, and you're right at the end, it was frustrating because, like, I'll be honest with you, every time, bar England and France, and I hate even saying it, every game I firmly believed that Ireland had a chance of winning. Even after the Welsh defeat, I felt they could have gone out and turned things around in Italy. France and England are too far ahead. But even the last game against Scotland, and they were well in this game, so they just showed they have the ability. But it's spot on. It's very frustrating with such, and it's not the players' fault either. It's where we are. It's trying to figure out, you know, are we exactly here? Can these players, we saw with Wales in particular, can these players turn things around and kind of make a big improvement in they're playing the WX3 now, but like in that Six Nations period before the next one, because what can't happen is that we fall further behind.
Fiona Hayes last night on Wednesday Night Rugby. Rory O'Connor actually has an interview with the chief executive of the IRFU in the Indo today, worth a read, putting to him all those points about the IRFU and the growth of the women's game, and he's making the point that it's going to take time. So you have to take Kevin Potts at his word, and at the same time hold them to account and follow their path. It would be great for them to do a press conference to put themselves forward to answer these questions as well, particularly on the back of this interview now that we have some further information. But anyway, we'll come back to that story, no doubt. We are turning to rugby. Cameron Hill is with us to help preview Ulster versus Connacht in the URC quarter-final.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good morning, Ger. And Shane's here as well. Good morning, Shane.
Good morning, Cameron.
Yeah.
We met last night, myself and Cameron, at the Mansion House.
That's right. Yeah. We both went along, totally unbeknownst to each other.
Yeah. Cameron was row 3, I was row 5, so there's obviously a preference here.
All right.
Yeah.
Good on, Cameron.
You know,
don't know how that happened. Yeah, absolutely.
Super flex.
It's the back-to-back crappy quiz wins all those years ago, Shane. I'm still dining off those. But Connacht versus Ulster up in Kingspan Stadium, Ravenhill in Belfast. Ulster versus Connacht, I should say. They're at home, obviously. Really big game. Could be Andy Friend's swan song, but looks like it's going to be a really, really interesting fixture. Connacht definitely, from their comments this week, are going in with a kind of nothing to lose attitude, everything to gain. Ulster are probably favourites for this one, but it should be a cracking game regardless.
Sounds like a bit of unrest in the Ulster camp. That seems to be the suggestion. Stephen Ferris has certainly suggested as much. Rob Little not signing the new contract when he's a player that you would think should be. There just seems to be little bits of discontent behind the scenes. Because it's funny, because Connacht are the form team probably in recent games, but Ulster are the team that have been there and done that all season. So it's kind of set up very, very nicely, this one.
Yeah, that interesting. Those comments from Stephen Ferris were very interesting, but he was making the point that it's only when Ulster aren't doing well that these start to surface. So maybe there could be a bit of discontent. He said that there's definitely a nervous energy around Belfast this weekend, that Connacht are coming up. They look like this is going to be their big performance of the year, and I felt in the last game against Glasgow they were quite hard done by. I think they could have gone on to win that game, and there was a refereeing decision that maybe I disagreed with towards the end, which ultimately proved crucial for the win for Glasgow. But yeah, I don't know. All year there seems to have been seeds of discontent just starting to bloom in Ulster this year, and maybe we can profit from that.
I almost feel like it's a style of play thing. A lot of people in Ulster don't like the style of play that's going on at the moment, which is mad. They have scored 75 tries. They're only 9 points off a Leinster team that are super dominant.
So what are they complaining about?
Quite a conservative style of play in some games from Ulster this season.
It's very maul heavy. So they scored 16 tries off mauls this year, and their maul defence especially has been exceptional. I was really impressed when I watched them against, I think, Leinster. They just set up so well. It was brilliant to watch. But, their backline hasn't been that inspiring this year. I think we've seen a lot of their players, such as James Hume, Michael Lowry, Robert Balakoon especially, taper off after showing such promise last year that maybe it hasn't quite gone to plan. So maybe that's the complaint, is that it's not aesthetically as pleasing, and it's really, front-facing rugby.
It's funny, Dan McFarlane made those comments after the defeat to Leinster, where he was kind of pointing out the geography and the resources, and not making excuses certainly for the result against Leinster, but certainly pointing out Leinster's dominance and why it might be. After the games against Dragons and Edinburgh recently, we didn't hear from Dan McFarlane before or after. It's like he's gone quiet a little bit. We've heard from him this week in advance of this one, but I found it quite interesting that he was kind of keeping the head down. I think Ulster probably decided, right, we're going to say as little as possible because this is the big one.
Yeah, maybe just let Connacht talk themselves up a bit too much. But Andy Friend has been very interesting this week in his comments, as is Quaylen Blade, who's been brilliant, especially in the latter half of the season. And he was talking during the week about how the other players have started to bring on their game, which means he's able to come into it a bit more. He scored 11 tries or something this year. It's incredible, really. And he is, with him and Jack Carty working in tandem, they're kind of unstoppable. When they really get into their flow, they're fantastic. And you've seen in first halves against certain teams, they look like they're putting them away very early doors. Now, unfortunately, Connacht have a tendency to let teams back into games. There was a game against Zebre a few weeks ago where you thought you were home and hosed, and then Zebre really came back into that game, and ultimately Connacht saw it out. But they do still have the capacity to self-implode. It feels like a little bit of a powder keg at times.
How do Ulster deal with Jack Carty? Because Dan McFarlane has name-checked him and said we will have a plan for him. Curious to see what that plan looks like.
Depends on their back three, to be honest. Like, Jack Carty has done a lot more kicking, especially in the latter half of the season, and it's a big part of Connacht's game now is to put them under pressure, and it's a good bit of kicking against Glasgow. So maybe the back three working together. It depends. I think Balakoon is there. Mike Lowry will be there. Jacob Stockdale is back in a big way too.
We haven't have the teams yet.
We don't have the teams. I think today's the day we get the teams, because it's tomorrow the kickoff.
Right.
So it depends on who they start in the back line, but they will be looking to maybe pounce on Jack Carty's kicks, which are good for the most part, but he's prone to the odd slip up here and there. So we'll see, but I think you probably just have to get your defensive line set very quickly and watch all those offloads, because Connacht are a big offloading team as well and love to keep the ball alive.
What's the pathway to the final for these two teams?
Bulls or Stormers for the winner, I think.
Yes.
Which is not exactly the... But if Ulster are to win, they'll have Bulls or Stormers in Belfast. So at least there is that carrot in the end of the stick for Ulster.
Yeah.
But then that old word that McFarlane used this week, momentum. I know you love the word, Ger, but Connacht have I think it's 1/6 of their last 7 URC games. So they have the momentum.
Yeah, especially after such a dreadful start to the season, winning just one in their first 5, and the first game of the season was that 36-10 defeat, a comprehensive defeat to Ulster. So there's probably a little bit of that on their mind. Obviously, you want to finish Andy Friend's tenure in style and do that for him and see how far they can go. Connacht might be a little bit distracted as well. I know Pete Wilkins will have one eye on how the Sharks do against Leinster, because the Champions Cup qualification is still not completely certain for Connacht. Last weekend, Scarlets and Benetton lost their semi-finals in the Challenge Cup, which means 7th should be enough for Connacht. But if the Sharks win the whole thing, they don't qualify. So they'll have one eye on that as well. But it feels like this is going to be an all-out there performance. And sometimes I feel like it's a backhanded compliment where people say, oh, Connacht play like they've nothing to lose, and they give it their all, and it's, less structured than usual.
Yeah, it needs to, it's a really big opportunity for Connacht to turn over Ulster. And at the same time, if McFarlane was to reach the final, this is all coming from Rory Keane's piece today in the Mail, if he was to reach the final, he'd be the first Ulster coach to reach 2 of these finals. And it's very hard to know what to make of McFarlane's time at Ulster. There was all those complaints about the travel that time, and you compare and contrast that with Andy Farrell talking about anytime there's disruption, we take this as an opportunity to just show how amazing we are. You're like, well, I prefer this approach to that approach. And yet then the team have managed to turn around the quality of their performances in recent weeks. I think they're crucially handicapped by the fact that they don't have a number 10 who is of the requisite standard to free the back line. At the same time, I don't know if Hume's form is a reflection of how unhappy he was after not getting the opportunity with Ireland, and then the injury that compounded that, but it looked like he was getting back to a little bit of form. They've some strength and depth finally with Stockdale back. It means that they do have something on the bench, and so it should be a rib roar.
Also, Mac Hansen and Bundy Aki back.
Yeah, they were ill for the Glasgow game last time out, so having them back is obviously a huge boost for Connacht. And I think it's going to be an interesting game in the forwards as well. Ulster launched so much off the maul, but Niall Murray, I think he's leading the way in the URC this year for line-out steals. So that could be a really, really interesting battlefield. It's going to be a cracking game. I think both teams are going to go out there, give it their all, and act like it is a cup final. It kind of is, especially for Connacht season. But I'm really, really looking forward to it.
All right, give me a prediction.
I think Connacht by 4. I think they'll have enough, and I just feel.
Jeez, in Belfast, Cameron. This is an Ulster team that beat Connacht 36-10 in the opening day back in September.
But they've come on so much, and I don't know. I've been a little bit disappointed by Mac Hansen this year for Connacht, I gotta say. But maybe this is the game he decides, I'm going to do a Mac special. Big Mac.
Cameron Hill, 2-time winner, back-to-back winner of the Crappy Quiz. Thanks very much.
6 months ago, yeah.
7 minutes past 9 this morning here on OTB AM, live with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition is available now on the OTB Podcast Network. Wednesday Night Rugby, Football Daily, which is your daily dose of football news from Phil Egan, and a Conor Myler feature interview as well. He's very, very interesting character, very smart fella, the Tyrone footballer. Now, Shifty Led says, I don't like Gibraltar. I was definitely treated differently when a couple of staff realised myself and the wife were from the Republic in 2002. It wasn't me being paranoid either, as the wife noticed it as well. Conal Foyne says, same as Ger, I subscribed just to watch the hurling before the Limerick match. Best matches last weekend were Kildare Dublin and Limerick Clare, both only on GAA Go. Slower Riot says, get Hanlon a pint if he's hanging.
I feel grand.
10 minutes, 15 minutes for him, and then he can go and hit the early house. Noel Kyle says, Liverpool are not good. An actual very stupid team at times. No idea how to control a game. Their plan is not to control games, or at least in the pre-Thiago and post-Thiago world, their plan was not to try and control games. And the Thiago experiment, you got to say, on balance, nearly worked, but then it didn't.
New midfield next season to control more games.
Who's it going to be? Trent? Is that it? Is Trent going to midfield? Is he going to be an official midfielder from the start of next season?
Feels like it. It's the way forward. I think Liverpool will certainly improve on this season. Bob Dwyer made the controversial call last night, Jerry said Arsenal will not get top 4 next season. So people in the comments, let Bob know what you think of that.
Yeah, tipsy Spurs fans' predictions a year out. Slower Ride says Haaland is the scariest 22-year-old on the planet. I think I could batter most 22-year-olds, but I wouldn't dream of going toe-to-toe with big Erling. Gonna leave that one there. After the break, Graham Hunter.
You're listening
to OTB AM. The Football Pod.
Jack O'Connor said, don't ever read a paper, it softens your head. It turns your mind to mush. You're kind of thinking, why did he say that? Or what did he mean by that? Or does he rate him higher than me? It opens up something that you do not want opened.
The only thing intercounty players should be looking at or listening to is the Football Pod.
Subscribe to the Football Pod wherever you get your podcasts. OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
Absolutely, like you mightn't even see Byrne starting, but to even have someone, if he is available, and have him on the bench, imagine bringing him on in a game like that. And he's the type of character. And you know what I've looked at with Leinster this season is when guys kind of are out with injury, they have the ability to come back and put in huge performances, you know, because they're fighting for their place. There's no getting used to game time again or bringing them up to speed. Leinster seem to have that with all their big players, and Tadhg Byrne is someone from Munster I find exceptionally similar like that. If he misses a couple of games with injury, he's the ability to come out and have a man of the match performance. He's just at the breakdown, he's absolutely immense, and to bring him would be huge. And like you could also, like, they probably will go with Snyman, but I thought Wycherley has been very, very good as well, you know, and Tom Ahern is fit again, so they've good options in that second row. Munster, and going over to Glasgow, as you said, Connacht, like, gave him a good run. I watched that game. It was a good game. So look, I think Munster obviously have that whole Thomond Park payback on their mind as well. That was a terrible performance for them, and they know they have the ability to beat Glasgow. Glasgow at home are a different animal as well, but I feel like those last 2 games in South Africa had really gelled this Munster squad together. You could see a lot more from their attack play, you know, even with their scrum not functioning in the second game, they were getting over the gain line, big carries. So I think it's going to be a good game, and I think Munster definitely have the ability to get that win over there, and could be even looking at getting into that URC final.
11 minutes past 9. I'm delighted to say Graham Hunter is with us this morning. Graham, good morning to you. How are you?
Tip top as ever. Tip top.
Really, I just want to talk about Aston Villa and the new Barcelona links. But in the meantime, some other stuff has happened, which I suppose we have to talk about.
I'm at all, Ger. I'm at all.
Leo Messi, Saudi Arabia, Barcelona love triangle. How do you think this one plays out?
Listen, the bones of the skeleton are pretty clear. I wrote about 3-4 weeks ago about the fact that this is all Messi driven. He phoned Xavi or WhatsApped him and said, listen, I want to come back. Are you up for it? And will the club be up for it? And Xavi immediately said, when I took over in November 2021, the training ground culture was slack. If you come back, it'll be my rules, my club. I'm Xavi the coach now, not Xavi your former teammate. If you can't sign up for that and towing the line in terms of it isn't a Leo Messi run training ground, then no. Messi said, fine, no problem at all. I understand. Yes, thumbs up. At which point Xavi passed it up to the board, and they've been frantically trying to design a financial plan which won't simply satisfy Messi, but which will be able to be given the thumbs up by La Liga. Because at the moment Barcelona are still in it's a recurring mess, because they need to meet financial fair play. There are things they want to do, like renewing the contracts of Sergio Roberto, Araujo, Gavi, amongst others, Dembele. And in order to do that, they need to be, according to Javier Tebas, about 200 million euros better off, either by revenue generated or by sales, than they are right now. So if you start with a negative 200 million, it's identical to when a club gets penalised for some sort of misdemeanour and they start the season 15 points down, how do you turn that around? So Xavi's task is to sort of quietly indicate which players that just won him the title, because a victory at Espanyol a week this weekend will make Barcelona champions. He's just got to kind of put the red tick or the red cross against some of his players and say, yeah, you can sell this guy that's just made me champion, in order to get even to the starting line, at which point they can make La Liga say yes to the return of Messi. They're obviously saying to La Liga, this is a benefit not just to us, this is a benefit to La Liga's marketability, television rights, its popularity, the fascination of won't he manage to hit levels when he comes back, all these types of things. Driving it is undoubtedly the idea that Messi wants to see whether he can still be competitive for the Argentinian national team by the time the Copa America is played, by the time the next World Cup is played. And you mentioned Saudi Arabia, where he went. He's got a massive contract to help promote that country. He's an ambassador for their tourism. It's his choice. It's money. If I were him, I would have turned down, but he hasn't turned it down. There's a big row. I don't know how closely he reported it, but Galtier had said that this week, the days that he went to Saudi Arabia were days off because they lost to Lorient at the weekend. 3-1. That day off was cancelled. Messi went, well, you can't cancel on me now. I'm off anyway to Riyadh. See you later. It's a storm in a teacup, because although he's been dropped and sanctioned and it's very public and there have been fans demonstrating, it's several weeks since Paris Saint-Germain understood that their efforts to renew him, which they were knee-deep in doing, were wasted, that he didn't want to stay. And therefore, it's a shame that his reputation is besmirched by a choice he's made to leave and go to Saudi Arabia with what the club is now saying, without our permission. Yeah, okay, big deal. Playing in Saudi Arabia would be a vast second choice, vastly lucrative for him. His idea is that his family want to come back to the house that they kept by the Mediterranean, about 20 minutes away from Camp Nou, that he wants to play in Football Club Barcelona. In fairness, even 2 months after he left in tears because of I think he'd been done in by a double dealing by the board, by Laporta. In Paris, 2 months later, he said, I want to go back one day. I want to help the club I love. So whether they can pull it off, lads, is something that's in the realm of speculation. But it's happening because he wants to return. And that's a giant step.
Turns out footballers have egos, Graham. I'm hearing news that will shock no one. But what will this do to the Barcelona dressing room? Because Messi walks back in as the prodigal son, and all of a sudden, I'm sure some heads are going to be turned.
Yeah, interesting point, Shane. Look, I don't know is the honest truth. I think on the positive side, nobody has ever, in my knowledge, questioned Messi's work ethic. He wanted things done to his timetable, to his style. He and Suarez and Neymar, while he was there, were always last out to training. So the whole squad would be out on time, and they'd traipse out, all of 4, 5, 6 minutes late. Many coaches wouldn't like that. Many coaches who had the three of them kind of let them away with it. As Neymar went, Suarez and Messi dictated a little bit about when there were days off, and they didn't run it like this is our club, but they did challenge. For example, Kiki Setien came in, he had an assistant who's now in charge of Gerard Piqué's Andorra side, who was very much trying to shake things up, be aggressive and chippy in training and push them harder. That didn't go down well with Messi and Suarez, simply not because they didn't want to work hard, but because they were like, who are you? Never heard of you, you're Joe Nobody. It's a kind of version of Churchill Medals. Piqué, on the other hand, was so impressed by this kid that he made him coach of Andorra, and they're shooting up the professional leagues in Spain. So when Messi comes back, there's no Neymar, there's no Suarez. We don't yet know whether Busquets will be there. He's going to make an announcement sometime in the next 6 or 7 days, we believe, about staying or leaving. He's out of contract. It would be a massive jump forward in the financial acrobatics they've got to perform if his salary suddenly disappeared. Frankly, honestly, everybody's speculating on he's leaving, he's staying. I don't know which he's going to do. I do think it's time. I do think it's the Xavi adores having Busquets there. Alba would then become one of the two players, saying who's been there before Ter Stegen. Neither of them would be playmates in the way that Suarez or Neymar were. And I say again, Messi is idiosyncratic. He went, nose to nose with Luis Enrique in the season that they won the title over a decision not given in a bounce game. And Luis Enrique told me that, from then on he didn't bounce games in training, but he wouldn't step back from Messi. Was absolutely furious about a foul not given in training, and it literally went nose to nose. And by the time the next match was over, Messi missed a couple of days training with gastroenteritis, and it took Xavi's intervention to bring peace to that situation. So if you're saying he's going to be an outright bad influence, I think the answer is no. And given that he wants to train, that he wants to... I mean, for example, when I wrote this 3 weeks ago, I checked the stats. I think he'd played 69 times for Paris Saint-Germain, and between goals and goal assists, there had been 63 goal contributions in 69 matches for Paris Saint-Germain, plus whatever he got. I mean, did he have 7 goals and 5 assists in the World Cup in that same time? So he was performing at Benzema levels in terms of goal contribution. It's just that he was performing in a Hollywood FC side where the coach changed every 8 or 9 months, and shooting fish in a barrel in France wasn't good training for the jungle of the Champions League.
If we were handicapping it, you'd say favourite, it would be that he comes back to Barcelona, but that's a deal fraught with financial gymnastics, and that maybe an unwanted but much closer likelihood than we might realise is an easy deal to go to Saudi Arabia, where there's no difficulty with that. He just goes, the money gets pressed, the cash machine gets filled up, and away he goes.
You've just done an Unai Emery. I genuinely wish I could have put it that articulately. Every comma, every full stop, every word perfectly judged. That's exactly the situation.
All right, there we go. You brought up Unai Emery. I didn't bring it up. I mean, I might have implanted it earlier in the conversation, but how the hell are Villa getting the financial director or the football director of Barcelona? This is not something that I ever envisioned happening at any point, really. It's like, what? How is this happening?
Yeah, let's say it's jigsaw parts that might fit together, but it's not specifically Villa coming in, tapping him on the shoulder and saying, listen, you're the man, and him jumping ship that easily. Mateo Alemán was sensational at Valencia when Unai Emery was there, and he's a pretty impressive man for his contact books, for how he makes deals happen. He's been pretty central in the way that Barcelona have been able to stabilise themselves and then, on a very low budget, put themselves into a position to win the title in Spain. There has been for several months, because it's a sort of tripartite agreement at the top of the club. The president, Joan Laporta, Jordi Cruyff, the football director, and Mateo Alemán, who's kind of like, you would call him the general manager, but he is a deal maker. Do not look at him in any manner of assessment you might make now, or if he joins Villa, which I think he will, other than to understand that he lives to make good deals. Now, there have been, I have to choose my words really, really carefully here. There have been points of disagreement between Laporta and Cruyff on one side, and Mateo Alemán about exactly how these deals are done, and therefore the idea that Mateo Alemán might not stay was relatively front and centre. That he would leave now, that he would leave before the summer market, where, remember, Mateo Alemán is probably the expert on how to get the books in order to meet financial fair play regulations from La Liga. Therefore, when you saw the announcement, it was like, yeah, he'll leave at the end of the season, but he's committed to helping Barcelona through the summer transfer market, even if it's up to the last minute of the... So if he joins Aston Villa, you've got the prospect of him being rather like Campos, the football director at Paris Saint-Germain, who's also director of football at Celta Vigo. Now that's a hell of a task. It might be that Celta Vigo and Paris Saint-Germain aren't outright going to be competing for the identical players and the identical budgets in the market. Nonetheless, it's a man whose time will become increasingly vital towards the end of the market when you get things over the line, and both clubs have got a call on his services. Now, that's the way things are beginning to shape up for Matteo Aleman. They can't, say Villa do persuade him, and I think they have. They can't now negate the contract, the leaving contract he signed with Barcelona, the Finiquito, and say, right, you have to dump Barcelona. Barcelona will be saying, like, well, we've got first call on him, and Villa might have a crucial meeting or a crucial phone call. It's a little bit unusual as a structure, but let me promise you, in terms of deal making, and for example, the way in which Unai Emery wants to take Lo Celso from Villarreal, amongst other deals, obviously, and where to place footballers too, if Villa get Matteo Aleman, they're signing a gem. You're making a big step forward.
Very exciting. It's like legitimately very exciting as a Villa fan. I know you're not supposed to be excited by like executives, but at the same time, unless the football club is run properly, the team never performs. It's very, very rare where a team suddenly shoots or breaks off the shackles of mediocrity that surrounds it. And there's nothing.
I seriously think that it's become such shark-infested waters to deal with international transfers. It's so convoluted about, is a player wholly owned by a club? Which agent are you dealing with? Are there intermediaries as well as the agent? Is the agent now being paid the kind of sum you used to be able to buy quite a handy footballer for? Yes. Will there almost always be competition for any footballer that Villa have set their eyes on? The answer is yes. And can Villa yet blow other clubs out of the water if they're in a straight competition, for example, with Chelsea or Liverpool or Manchester City? The answer is they probably can't. Therefore, what you need is acuity. What you need is somebody who can say to an agent, look, if there's a modicum of doubt about several thousand extra per week at that club, or there's a modicum of doubt over the other club might spend more money on your player, trust us, because I know what a coach is going to do with your footballer. I know your footballer will be better. He'll play more regularly. We can get the deal done quicker. We'll pay the instalments differently. Matteo Aleman is beyond a wheeler and dealer. It's not that I'm saying. What I'm saying is that there is a level of connection and trust and respect for him around the world game, particularly in Europe, I'd emphasise, that can just step a club a little bit ahead on deals that might be in the balance.
Graham, if we skip across the El Clasico divide, Jude Bellingham seems very close to joining Real Madrid. Bit of a blow to the likes of Man City and of course Liverpool seemingly pulled out of the deal a little bit earlier, but this is a big move for Bellingham, and I guess, as we mentioned in the show earlier, he will remain away from the eyes of the English media.
Yeah, Shane, I mean, there is no question, and I think and I hope that we've talked about Real Madrid and Bellingham on your show before, many months ago, because they've been entirely open about the desire to sign him and add him to 20-year-old Camavinga and 23-year-old Tchouaméni and 24-year-old Valverde and 22-year-old Vinicius and 22-year-old Rodrigo and 25-year-old Militao. Therefore, like the logic of trying to get this 19, nearly 20-year-old, I mean, I have to say, brilliant footballer, a brilliant character. He's got an extremely good brain, extremely mature. He's just a leader figure in the making. That logic is good. I am a little bit surprised. I've known for months, I've been talking about the fact that Bellingham and Guardiola were Manchester City's two highest priorities. And these days, particularly for an English club, an English leader club, trying to sign a young English footballer, you'd have thought City was the winning bet there. What I'll tell you is that I don't think any of it has been made up about how close Madrid are. I don't believe it's made up that the terms with Bellingham's family and his father, Jude's father, is involved, and he gets the highest reputation possible. I think the terms are agreed. The terms between Real Madrid and Borussia Dortmund are not agreed. One of the football papers here this morning, Marca, has gone heavily on, deal done, deal agreed. Diario AS, which was the one that first touted the idea that Bellingham would choose Madrid over City, have gone into reverse. They've gone clearly on a briefing from Real Madrid. Do not say it's done. We fear that Dortmund have push this news out so that City are forced into bidding more. Vatska, who's the equivalent of Matteo Alemana at Dortmund, is shrewd, and Madrid genuinely think that this splurge of publicity has been brought out because Bellingham is being allowed to treat with other clubs, not because he's out of contract, that goes to 2025, but because Dortmund know he wants to leave and they know they're going to get a massive sum. So Dortmund, in knowing that things were close in personal terms with Madrid, what Diario AS is saying is this is out there with Dortmund's full blessing so that City get a punch in the ribs and come in and try and outbid Real Madrid. So I don't believe that City will abandon this deal quickly because they very, very much wanted him. And you can understand why. If you think about Ilkay Gundogan probably leaving, something out of contract, and a degree of renovation and youth needed in the midfield, and also just a hunger of a new man in, a new quality man in, competing for places, just something Guardiola believes in. This would be a setback for City if it does happen when it comes to Real Madrid. As somebody who works over here, I would be thrilled.
One last question for you. Matt Doherty got a few minutes last night for Atletico Madrid as they moved ahead of Real in the table. He hasn't really registered that much just yet in terms of game time. From that perspective, is there any prospect of him still being a footballer who plays in Spain next season, do you think?
Well, yeah, they moved ahead of Madrid, and there will be repercussions for that. Florentino Perez, the president of Madrid, will be extremely unhappy. If memory serves, I think Matt had maybe had 6 or 7 minutes before. It's been an underwhelming opportunity for him, and that's partly because initially he was competing against outright clear-cut favourites in that position. And then when they went to they played when Reinildo got injured, who was sensational. They went to a formation whereby Carrasco was guaranteed playing the left full back, and they play normally. It looks like 5 when they're defending, but it's a 4 whenever they've got the ball. And if I'm honest, it's about conversion therapy. There is nothing but good words coming out of the club about Matt and his presence there. But he's been competing against players who are absolutely set in their position. There hasn't been the need to rotate. There haven't been enough injuries in his position to give him the open door. I've been surprised. I've been surprised about how little opportunity he's had. But it's a damnation that they are unrecognisable from pre-World Cup. They're certainly over the last 6 or 7 weeks Spain's most attractive side.
Wow.
And it shows Simeone and watching as much European football as I do, they're not far off. They're certainly top 3-4 entertaining sides in Europe. They've utterly changed their mentality. And frankly, had they been playing the way that they've been playing pre-World Cup, I think Matt would have had much more game time. He's definitely liked, whether he stays next season or not. They have financial fair play problems to sort out. They lost huge amounts of money because they didn't play in Europe after Christmas. I hope he does. I hope he gets much more chance to show what he's made of. At the moment, the circumstances in the most crazy way have really gone against him, Jeff.
Graham, before we let you go, a quote for you. I'm 68, but there's nobody ahead of me in football terms. Not Pep, not Klopp, not Arteta. Your thoughts on the return of Big Sam Allardyce?
I wish we had time for me to sing the entire theme tune to the Muppet Show.
We have time.
It's funny how you can get away with tosh like that, having had sides relegated, having been caught with your pint of wine, flipping about sums about your charge as England. What was his long and glorious reign at England? Was it one match?
One match, one win.
Honestly, the one word, no, that's not true. The one word that came to my mind that I can use on your show when I watched him looking old and tired and wheezy and saying, "There's nobody." I thought, yeah, Muppet.
Graham, great stuff. Thanks a million.
Pleasure.
Great stuff from Graham Hunter there in Barcelona for us this morning. On tomorrow's show, Adrian and Shane with Rog, football reaction, Alan Quinlan, Fire Pit, Ronan McNamee and Darkness into Light, and plenty more besides. Right now, John Maughan and Neil Ewing with Will last night ahead of Sunday's Connacht and Munster football finals. Have a tremendous Thursday.
Decider, while Kerry go into the Munster final against Clare where their record reads 11 wins and 1 defeat against the banner. The man who was in charge for Clare's famous win in 1992 was John Maughan, who is with us. We've got Neil Ewing as well. How are you getting on, lads?
Very well. And yourself?
Good. Cannot complain at all.
Good. Well, how you doing? Hello, Neil.
Hey,
John. How are you?
John, if I can take you down memory lane to start with the first one. 1992, I would think, with all of your achievements in management over the years, must be one of the sweetest days you had across your career.
I didn't fully appreciate at the time, Will, the magnitude of winning that Munster title, to be quite honest with you. I got involved with Clare in 1990. I was 28 years of age at the time. I sat down with the Clare management or the executive with a view to taking on a coaching role, and I asked the obvious question, well, who's the manager? And they told me they didn't have any idea who that might be. So I left Gort's or Sullivan's Hotel in Gort on a midweek evening, got down to chat about being coach of the Clare team. I ended up coming home as manager or whatever that meant at the time. But it was an exciting time. Obviously, I did, as I say, beating Kerry, the aristocrats of Gaelic football. Jack O'Shea, his last game for Kerry. Seamus Coleman made his debut on that occasion. But once we got involved with Clare and we got on a bit of a roll. Well, we won the All-Ireland B Championship in 1991. Ironically enough, I think the shit hit the fan for Clare. Clare, they had travelled up to play Sligo in a B Championship in 1990 around October time, from the best of memory. They had no manager, they had no coach, and I think they had just about 15 players. And they were beaten on that occasion, and things were pretty desperate. I suppose they must have been very desperate when they came knocking on my door. I was living in Galway City at the time. I was based in Custody Bars and Athlone. And as I say, I got stuck into management, and we just, for some reason, we managed to get a little bit of organisation, got a number of players back that wouldn't play with the county, and got a bit of momentum going. Winning that B title in 1991 gave us a bit of a huge momentum going into the championship in 92, and we put off what was a great victory for Clare, and hard to believe it's 31 years ago, but unfortunately it is.
Yeah, I've been reading a bit, John, about your training methods when you went in as well. I mean, as you mentioned, you're 28. It's 3 years since your playing career has been brought to an end. You're working with the Army at the time. And it seemed maybe some of those principles from the Army training is what you brought in when you picked up that group of players.
Look, the stories will be embellished with time, and I know some of the Clare players went on record suggesting that it was a bit of a torture camp. But I think when we played Kerry in the 1991 championship, we were toe-to-toe with them for about 50-55 minutes. And as though in the last 15 or 20 minutes of the game, we just ran out of steam and couldn't sustain what we had done so brilliantly well for maybe 50 minutes of the game. So quite clearly it was a fitness issue. So we spent a bit of time on strengthening that aspect of our game, shall we say. I can't put it any more subtly than that. But we did some hard runs. It was of its time. Certainly now there'll be a little bit more science attached to it. There was no nutritional psychology involved. It was just basic hard work. And that was good enough back in its day. Certainly it wouldn't wash in today's modern game with all the backroom expertise and all sorts of... In fact, the GPS wouldn't allow us to do the likes of some of the things we got away with back in those early days.
You say that maybe now you appreciate it more than you would have done 30 years ago. But when you think about it, the scale of the achievement, to have beaten one of the real aristocrats of Gaelic football and for it to have been Clare's first win against Kerry in the championship since 1949, and also to be achieved in the context of, as you say, when you come into that team, it's B championship, it's struggling to get a panel of players together. That is one hell of a remarkable achievement there.
It was, and I think it gave hope to a few other counties, including people would often suggest to me, and I'm certainly claiming that the football success enhanced their hurlers' prospect, but by chance or coincidence, they did go on to win an All-Ireland title in 1995, having laboured in the bottom half of championship seasons for quite a number of decades prior to that. But yes, I suppose it does. I don't think we get away with it now, and even though I'd love to see the likes of a Clare win a Munster title on Sunday. I just feel it may not happen. I don't think they're good enough to beat a current Kerry team, and that's what's happened. The big teams have got just a little bit better will. They've moved on, and we've now. A lot of it's to do with finances. I'll be quite honest with you. And unfortunately, those that are in the second and third and fourth tier just cannot bridge the gap for whatever reason, whether it's geographical or urbanisation, combination of factors. But back then, you could get away with it. Leitrim repeated in 1994, famously, winning their provincial title. But I just get the impression that the opportunities mightn't be as easy for the so-called minnows, if you want to call it, not being disrespectful in any way. And incidentally, with Neil here, I just marvel at what Sligo have been doing for the last couple of years. And just moving on to that very briefly, Will, the underage success has bubbled to the surface. A Hogan Cup final with Summerhill College, which I was really delighted. I was lucky enough to win a Hogan Cup myself, and I really respect and appreciate the magnitude of winning a Hogan Cup. But to get to a Hogan Cup final for Summerhill after so many years not doing so was brilliant. Turbo Curry have been coughing up underage talent. And the likes of Sligo have done a really, really brilliant job in nurturing the talent with great coaches and a lot of hard work. And unfortunately, not every county has positioned themselves to do that. But certainly in Sligo's case, it's beginning to, I suppose, surface now with their Division 4 success. And I saw them playing last year above in Croke Park against Cavan and Tottenham Cup. I thought they were absolutely brilliant. They have a lot of talent. And to see their underage, under 20s winning a successful Connacht title, it just gives you an indication with really, really hard work and good investment in identifying the right guys to take the younger underage cohort of players to the next level. They're doing that brilliantly well. Clare have done it at senior level. I mean, what Colin Collins has achieved down there is quite remarkable. 7 years in Division 2, really boxing above the weight, you could say, over the last number of years. I just begin to wonder and keep my fingers crossed that they go out and really put on a top-class performance on Sunday against Kerry, but I just think they might come up a little bit short.
Yeah, like Neil, when we look at this, I mean, obviously there's a romance of looking back to 92, but you look at how intimidating Kerry's record has been in recent times. Jack O'Connor goes into his 9th Munster final. He's won 5 of them across the period where he's been manager. They've only lost 1 Munster final in the last 2 decades. That was in 2008 against Cork. They lost the semi-final against Cork back in 2020. Other than that, we could be talking about a huge run of Kerry victories in a row here. Kerry have taken a real stranglehold over this province, and their championship record in the last 5 where they've played against Clare, they've won by an average of 12 points. So, in theory at least, this is a hell of a task for Clare to try and overturn the current All-Ireland champions.
Yeah, for sure. Well, when you say that out loud, it really highlights the pedestal that Kerry are on in Munster. I think John made a very important point there in terms of, maybe what was possible 20, 30 years ago and what's possible now. I think, maybe back in the 90s, maybe even the early 90s, some of the bigger counties weren't as organised as maybe they should have been. And, probably spearheaded by some of the counties in the north getting their act together. Tyrone, they got Club Tyrone up and running. That probably spurred the likes of a Kerry, the likes of a Dublin to, step back and go, okay, what are we doing here? We can't just rely on the natural advantages that we have in terms of our history, maybe our playing populations. So, you've had that with the bigger counties getting themselves organised. That's increased the gap. And I think on that note, you have to ask the question, what went on in Cork during that period of time that they weren't able to get themselves organised, or that they delayed getting themselves organised? And I think for me, and it's maybe something that I rabbit on about too much, but a big thing that's changed from around that, late 90s, early 2000s period is the league structure, where, we previously would have had divisions 1A, 1B, 2A, 2B. So you didn't have that huge divide, where at the minute we have divisions 1 to 4, and the counties in division 4, even the lower half of division 3, they're getting no exposure to playing those big counties. And I think what has happened is a lot of the smaller counties have got their act together in terms of strength and conditioning, and are doing all the work that they need to do. But I think when you play outside your comfort zone, the skill levels are there, but they're just not tested, at that higher level. And if the counties got more exposure to playing at that higher level, there's a great opportunity there for them, which is why I'm absolutely delighted that Clare, after all their success over the last few years, maintaining Division 2 status, they were kind of unlucky to come up against Kerry in Munster semi-finals, but now they're going to get the chance to play Kerry and go on and play, 3 top quality games after that. In terms of, Kerry facing into Sunday, it's, let's be honest about it, it's a huge, huge task for Clare. But I think Colin Collins, he's a defiant man. You see him interviewed, that defiance, it's bouncing out of him. So I'm really interested to see what sort of plan he has come up with to take on this Kerry team.
Yeah, I would think, Neil, when it comes to the plan, it has to be about shutting down space and trying to spoil. Because if they leave themselves open, this Kerry team have got so many good attackers, and we even saw with Clare last year where they pushed up a bit on Derry and Derry were able to expose spaces behind Clare. I would think shutting the bolt door and trying to make themselves very difficult to break down has to be priority number 1 for the Gaelic grounds on Sunday.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think that should be anyway taken as a slight. And I think, it's become very cliched in Gaelic football, in the last, quite a number of years to talk about defensive football. But, if you look at any field sport, the number 1 premise is to stop conceding goals or to prevent conceding goals and points. So, any team going out has to have that as their number 1 priority. And I think what's happened is a lot of teams have obviously realised, we need to be solid defensively. And they want to get up and support the play and attack. But, you can only do what your opponent will allow you on some of these occasions. So, I think Clare, common sense would suggest that they will set up to limit the space. The big thing I think Clare have in their favour is they have some serious ball winners around the middle of the field that maybe other counties don't have. And if you were to look at possible weaknesses in Kerry, it's maybe that midfield sector since David Moran has stepped away. And that's not to say it is a weakness. It's a possible weakness because, the weakness is definitely not in their forward line. You even look at some of their defenders, they have pace and aggression to burn there. So in terms of where they're not tested, it's that midfield area. And, I think that's where Clare were even able to turn the screw on Cork in the second half. They were able to win that primary possession further up the pitch. And that's maybe what happens sometimes for teams from lower divisions playing against, the so-called bigger teams, is that they struggle to win primary possession around the middle of the field. So that's somewhere Clare won't have an issue in the field.
John, what's been your assessment of Kerry so far? Because some of the soundings out of Kerry, myself and Neil were chatting a few weeks ago about the article which was put into the Irish Times about Ger Shane, and he was saying that maybe the depth isn't quite there within the Kerry panel. They haven't replaced David Moran, so therefore the favourites tag should be shunted across to Galway or to Dublin for this season. What have you made of Kerry the first few months of the season, John?
Well, last Sunday created a small little bit of confusion. Because we saw an underperformance from Dublin. And having watched Dublin against Derry in the Division 2 final, I felt that Dublin were taking it nice and easy through the league phase. They just did it sufficiently well to win the league title, get an extra game, a league title final, and move on. But certainly Kerry exposed them the last week. And I'm only surmising here in the last couple of days, would Dublin be in the middle of a training load and trying to get their timing spot on with a view to pool games? Because I don't want to be disrespectful to Louth, but one would surmise that Dublin will have sufficient expertise and know-how and guile and experience to land an Ulster title Sunday week, and without overexerting themselves. So I think Dublin at this juncture, to me, despite last Sunday's performance, an underperformance, and I'm discrediting Kildare for the great job they did. To me, they're ranked number 1. Kerry number 2. Will we learn in the ranking for me? And that could change after Sunday because I'm just interested to see where Kerry are at. They had an indifferent. I never saw such a shambolic performance from a Kerry team as I did against Mayo up in McHale Park a number of weeks ago. A couple of months ago now, and they just looked in total disarray. And I think Jack O'Connor's philosophy and approach was year one, win everything, beat everyone out the gate, win league, win championship, and he succeeded in doing so. This year, I think it's a question of pull the reins, get our 6 points, survive in Division 1, which he has done, and let's get our timing and our appetite absolutely spot on, as it did so brilliantly well for decades in the 70s and 80s, hitting that All-Ireland semi-final and peaking at the right time. And I just surmise that Kerry are trying to achieve the very, very same this year, something similar to what Dublin are doing. Will we learn a lot? I hope just that Clare really put in a great performance. I know that they had hoped to maybe for a home or away toss, and Clare would go to Killarney, but it's gone to Limerick. And that's where we were lucky enough to win in 1992. I don't think that'll count for anything, incidentally. But you asked the question, Will, I'm taking a little bit longer to answer than I should, perhaps. We don't really know. We just think, everybody's talking, this championship is absolutely wide open. There's 5 or 6 teams that could win it. But right now, based on performance, I mean, are Derry good enough to win it? I'm not quite sure. Will Armagh beat Derry in an Ulster final? They could, they might, they will. I don't know. They have looked at times under performances in games you'd expect them to win. Dublin now are in that space. I just think maybe Kerry might be a little bit different. And with that ranking that I have worked out in my own head, in my opinion, Dublin are 1, Kerry 2. After Sunday, Kerry could be number 1 and Dublin number 2. So in the ranking as to who might win an All-Ireland title. But Kerry, I just think they've too much experience, too much guile, too much know-how. And they have, the couple of big name players, the Sean O'Shea's, the Cliffords, if they have the appetite, and we saw maybe Shane Walsh underperforming to a certain extent for Galway this year, arguably Player of the Year last year, or right up there with the very, very best. He hasn't hit the sweet spot for Galway yet, but I suspect he will when the pressure is at his greatest. The same might apply to Kerry. Get through Sunday if they do, get into the pool stages. The right thing about the pool stages is they don't have to be come out of number 1. This is quite bizarre, Will. I mean, Mayo, we're just chatting with a few friends of mine, colleagues, about it today and yesterday. I mean, Mayo might only have to win a single game in the pool, lose to Kerry, beat Louth and lose to Cork, and still qualify as a third-ranked player in the group and get into that preliminary quarter-final. It's rather bizarre the way this whole thing is set up now that we fully understand and realise what the consequences of our winning or losing. So would Galway be better off, incidentally, I'm moving a little bit off topic here, would Galway be better off losing to Sligo in a provincial title on Sunday and getting an easier pool qualifying system? The reality is they're winners. They're playing, I think, Armagh and Tyrone and Westmeath. Losers, one would perceive that they might have an easier route to get into a quarter-final. So there's a lot of permutations, and I think there's a couple of teams just, I won't say playing funny games, they're just trying to get their training load right and play at their best when it matters most.
Neil, it is one of those quirks I wondered about, which was the draw happening this week for the All-Ireland Series and for the Tailteann. What about doing the Tailteann draw, because that starts a week earlier than the All-Ireland Senior Championship, but to have a situation where teams can know the consequences of winning or losing their final as to who they play in the group stages, to me seems a bit bizarre.
And listen, you can see the reasoning behind it in terms of logistics, even teams in terms of travelling, trying to arrange a lot of that in advance. What it has done is it's been perfect for managers to create a siege mentality, because you're left with a lot of people presuming who the winners will be in certain provinces, maybe all of the provinces, and it's given a lot of fodder to managers to talk about being written off. And we've seen John Kiley try to use that one with the Limerick Hurlers the week before last. It didn't work last weekend, but yeah, a lot of people have been teed up to be insulted on the back of the draw. Listen, it's a difficult one. It's not ideal to have groups drawn and we don't actually know what the makeup of the groups will be. 50% of the teams in them aren't confirmed. And probably that's even exasperated by the teams that have reached provincial finals this year, where, you're probably looking at the Ulster final, where it's the only one where it's a Division 1 team and a Division 2 team. And I know Clare would have been Division 2 this year, but, you can take it there, maybe Division 3 on the back of a relegation. So, you throw the groups, people want to talk about the groups. To talk about the groups, you have to make presumptions. So, yeah, it is a little strange. But I don't for a second think that there's any county or any manager or any group of players that are going to be looking at a potential group and saying, okay, let's throw our hat at this provincial final. You know, the provinces get a hard time, but I think for the players, definitely they want to win one. Number two, they definitely do not want to lose. You look at any of those matchups and, you know, there's no team or none of the perceived bigger teams in those games want to lose to the perceived weaker teams. And then again, for the players, I think you can have all the A versus B games in training, and lads, you know, stock will rise, you know, they'll move up the ladder, maybe get themselves into the first 15, or, you know, maybe get themselves into a 26. But performances in championship games, you know, no matter what the opposition or what the scoreline might be, carry a lot more stock than performances in A versus B games. And I just remember though, Dublin and Louth is actually another Division 1 versus Division 2 game. So, and it's probably one that will be really, really interesting as well, the form that Louth are in.
John, give us a manager's perspective here on something Neil has just said, which is perceived writing off of your team being used as a motivation. So you're Tony McEntee, Kieran McGeeney, Colin Collins at the moment, or Mickey Hart, the 4 teams who are considered the underdogs going into the finals over the next 2 weekends. Is that something the manager can actually use? Does that actually work on players if you say, do you know what, the media over there in Dublin have decided we're not going through?
You know, absolutely. Like, I mean, we've told more lies in dressing rooms and stories concocted of what they read and what they heard. I've done that several times in order to try and inspire a team and get that little edge. Look, there's so many tricks in the books, and I've read some fantastic stories about managers pulling off famous lies in dressing rooms where the concocted stories of what the media might have said. In fact, one famous manager who remained nameless, reading directly, quoting from a certain newspaper, a Sunday Independent, and he just was concocting words and making up the stories went along, was total fabricated to inspire a certain player. But like, I mean, well, the reality is there are some great stories told and some great stories that will remain untold, unfortunately, as to what kind of trickery goes on in trying to inspire a team. But look at most managers are great liars.
There you go, Neil. Confirmation, if we ever needed it, that managers are more than happy to make up whatever narrative is required. I saw
I was wondering what story John was making up as he was reading that Sunday Independent.
Is that the mission, John, that the manager was yourself, which is what Neil's implying here?
Not quite. No, but anyway, you get the picture. I'm not fabricating what I said. There's actually factual evidence here that will substantiate what I've just said from a Sunday Independent article in particular. And if you do a small Google, you'll find out exactly what I'm talking about after the show.
I do think, though, from a player's perspective, that you know, I'm not sure what power that has, you know, among today's intercounty players in terms of motivating them. You know, there's access to so much information, you know, online. They're seeing probably so much, maybe through social media, you know, that probably has more of an impact on them because they're hearing it, you know, a lot more repeatedly there. And I think the real impact that it can have is maybe in the people they meet around the county in the week running up to the game. You know, people, every second person they're saying, you know, talking about, oh, you've been written off, or such and such said that you have no chance, this type of thing. And players try to shut that out, but, you know, it has to creep in, and it can actually take, you know, become draining, trying to shut it out and to convince yourself you're not hearing it.
Yeah. One that I saw, and John will be familiar with Ballycommon with his last 3 years in Offaly, is that they won one of the Offaly Tier Championships last year, and what they brought into their dressing room, Neil, was a newspaper cutting of the power rankings of the start of the year, where it was said they had no chance of winning the title, and they had it on county final day stuck up in the dressing room.
Yeah, I'd counteract that, Will. Did the team who came maybe second last or in the power rankings and got knocked out of the championship earlier bring the power rankings in as well?
I'm not sure. I'd have to go back and check it, but I thought it was interesting. The lads all had to get their picture with the newspaper cutting that was there. I think it's maybe squeezing whatever type of inspiration you can possibly get out.
Yeah, I think it's more a bit of crack when it falls in your favour than a motivation that's going to get you over the line.
I think so. I think that picture
I can't imagine Will or Neil, the great Joe Kernan with his Armagh team and winning his All-Ireland title, the half-time story, coming in and smashing his runners-up trophy off the floor, the dressing room wall, missing one or two players as he flung into the wall. I mean, I agree, Neil, managers are smarter, players are smarter now. As you say, the access that have to sports psychologists, etc., that might upset the trend or the mood in the dressing room because everybody has their own way, and it's so professional now. I think Mayo doing doubled up on everything, and we've seen that with most of the big inter-county teams. There's so many resources, many of them with big egos, and certainly in some cases there mightn't necessarily like a manager tiptoeing into what would be perceived as their patch when it comes to the psychology and getting a team ready for action. But certainly the thing has changed, and some of that kind of stuff that I alluded to would not be mentioned in the dressing room today.
Very good. We're going to take a very short break. When we come back, we'll be taking a look at the Connacht final between Galway and Sligo. Don't forget that our Gaelic football coverage here on Off the Ball is in partnership with AIB. They are the proud sponsors of the Senior Football Championship. Check out the hashtag #TheToughest for more.
OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now. OTB